to expand in context, because Geeta, right now, we're at the precipice of the cusp where it's very easy and we are compelled to take sides and take stands. On social media is flush with hashtag I stand with Palestine, hashtag I stand with Israel. And one really doesn't blame most people because the kind of visuals that we are seeing are horrific. But for the benefit of our viewers, if we can track back where the seeds of the current conflict have been sown through history, would you give us more perspective on that?
Well, Preeti, the fact that we've seen a Hamas attack and nobody can condone a terror attack or an attack of such magnitude where scores of people have died and so many remain injured in hospitals. But the fact is that there is a backstory. There were about 270 deaths in West Bank alone in the past 2 months. What was the international outrage or coverage on the issue? We have seen in the past year and a half or two, for that matter, an increased aggression from the Israeli side when it comes to Palestine and Palestinian territories. We've seen the pushing of Palestinians into corners in West Bank and in Gaza. Again, nobody's condoning a terror attack. Hamas has taken a very extreme step, but we've seen under the Netanyahu administration with Ben Gvir as the national security minister, how the landscape, the political landscape of Israel and Palestine changing. Al-Aqsa Mosque being breached, never seen before, forces entering. The fact that refugee camps have been bombed and raided time and again in the recent past. The Sheikh Jarrah locality where Palestinians were being displaced. If you look at the map from 1948, when Israel was created,
we're going to play that map out. Just 1 second, Geeta. We're going to play that map out, and maybe our viewers would also get a bit of context with what we're just playing. Go ahead, Geeta.
Right. If you look at the map of Israel from the time of its creation in 1948, and if you look at the past map even before 1948. Right now, what we're showing you is a map of the.
No, we'll play the shrinking territory of Palestine. We'll just tell our producer.
Yes,
there you go.
That's the map. So if you look at the 1917 is up until 1947 is how that map looked. That was Palestine for you. And then in 1948, when Israel was created, you have Israel in green and you have Palestine in yellow, which included West Bank, the old city of East Jerusalem, as also Gaza, which is the tiny corner on the left end. And then you have the situation today where you have West Bank as that yellow patch on the right and Gaza as the small strip, that's called the Gaza Strip, to the left of the map. And this is not just the current map. If you look at the current territory, the West Bank also is a little more in scatter, Preeti, because we've seen the announcement of Jerusalem as the capital city. There are a lot of settlers who've moved into territories which were erstwhile Palestine. So there is a huge problem in how the Netanyahu administration was dealing with Palestine. Ben Gvir, the far right coming into power, and how they were dealing with Palestine. The Palestinians were losing patience, being bombed and raided, the killings, without any outrage. All the conversations were confined to the United Nations and maybe the United Nations Secretary General asking for or condemning the attacks. The others condemned, but there was no clear outrage the way we are seeing today, which is called for. We're not saying this is not called for, but we're just saying that it would have been great if people would have really focused and noticed what was happening in Gaza. We know that the Israelis say that they are handling the territories by themselves and that Israel no longer has control over these areas. But look at Gaza today. They've shut the borders. Electricity flows in from Israel, food, water. Today, as a retribution, as punishment, borders have been shut, food, water, electricity has been shut in a strip which houses 2.2 million people in an area that's just about 365 kilometers, square kilometers in geographical space. It is the most densely populated area on the planet, and many, including David Cameron, former Prime Minister of the UK, have actually called it the world's largest open prison. So there needs to be an introspection. Nobody is saying what Hamas did
And
is
it's difficult to do so right now because the kind of barbarism which has been unleashed by Hamas is so overwhelming that many of us, and understandably, are caught up in that. Some of us who've been traditional Palestine supporters in terms of, of what their cause has been, today are questioning that cause, and understandably, because the extent of the terrorism is so deep. Geeta, stay with me. We're going to come back to the question of how India policy where Palestine is concerned, Israel is concerned, has developed. But I just want to bring in Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow, ORF, Strategic Affairs Expert. Also with us is Mr. Khurram Omar, National Secretary, RUML. I want to cut across to Sushant Sareen first. Sushant Sareen, understandably with what Geeta and I were talking about, the visuals that are right now going viral, what we see on national television, are so overwhelming and so barbaric and so brutal that one does somewhere down the line tend to forget what has been the inception of it all.
Yeah, but Preeti, I think the story given by Geeta has been rather one-sided on the inception of this whole conflict. It's not my side, it's what is the reality. When the partition plan was approved in 1948, who were the ones who opposed it? Who were the ones who refused to accept that UN-sanctioned plan? The Israelis, or the new state of Israel, got virtually only the Negev desert, which was not a blade of grass grew out there. And the Arabs got together and invaded them because they refused to accept the partition plan. That is when the first fight happened. Later on, in 1967, again, it was not as though the Arabs were living in peace. There were constant forays into Israeli territory. There were constant attacks against Israel. And finally, there was a war in which the Israelis captured most of the area, including the Golan Heights, including the West Bank, including Gaza. Then there was a peace process. And I don't know why Geeta hasn't mentioned the peace process. And there was a time when not only did, forget the fact that Israel completely vacated the Gaza Strip, but even on the West Bank, the deal that had been worked out at Camp David virtually gave them 94 to 98% of the entire West Bank. That was virtually a two-state solution, not entirely, but virtually. And the Palestinians refused to accept it. So there, it's a kind of a complicated history. There have been mistakes made from all sides, and I don't think we should take a one-sided view of it. There have been certainly mistakes made by Israel, and one does not completely condone everything that Israel has done. But that does not mean that we simply whitewash what the Arabs have done, and make it completely look one-sided. So that is one part of it. The second part of it is what is happening now. And again, I think, India has had a traditional position as far as the issue of Palestine is concerned. That position has also evolved. If I remember correctly, India was one of the countries, and I would somewhat say shamefully, which opposed the partition plan. We accepted our own partition, but we opposed the partition for somebody else. But let that be. Traditionally, we recognized Israel later on, but we never had full diplomatic relations. And we had a certain position on the Palestine issue, but later on it's kind of evolved, and we are now more or less inclined in terms of a two-state solution. That has been India's traditional position, and I think India still sticks to it. But look, that the political side and the those negotiated solution is one side. People are conflating what the Hamas has done with the brutality they have done, with the indiscriminate nature of killing that they have carried out, with the fact that now there is a retaliation taking place. Again, people are saying that this is a disproportionate reaction. Please tell me, what is a proportionate reaction to a child being butchered, a women being mass raped, mass killings taking place in cold blood? You go into somebody's house and butcher people down, gun people down. What is a proportionate reaction according to you? And just put yourself and your family, and I don't want to really make it personal, but just put yourself in
Sushant Sareen, the fact is, I understand nobody's trying to paint one side of the picture, because yes, there are two sides to the coin, and therefore where the conflict stands today is intractable and as complex as it is. So there are two sides of the picture, and I don't think Geeta meant to give just one side, because with what you've just elucidated, just about 2 months ago, there have been killings on the other side as well of 8-year-old children. You know, you and I both understand that, and nobody is denying either or.
Yeah,
Geeta, do you want to come in?
Absolutely.
I
agree with all of what
let Geeta
Sushant...
come in, sir, coming right back to you, and we'll bring in our third guest.
I agree with all of what Sushant has said, but I'm just saying that adding a little bit more context to the extremity and the extreme actions that have taken place on the 7th of October, again, not justifying it, and also not saying that Israel's action is or anger is unfounded. It's absolutely founded on grounds where a terror attack has taken place. But look at what has happened in the recent past. The far-right government of Netanyahu, where he had to join hands with extreme political parties who have a very conservative and far-right approach, with Ben Gvir as the national security minister, changed the landscape and politics of the region, Sushant, when it comes to how they were dealing with the Palestinians, what they were doing to the Palestinians, and how Gaza certainly is an area where they say that the Israeli forces left in 2005, but when it comes to control, whether if it's their livelihood, their life per se, it is all dependent on Israel. So there is a dichotomy in what is being said and what is the situation on the ground, is all.
You know, Geeta, I'm going to come right back, and I'll go back to Mr. Sareen because he wanted to come in for a rebuttal, but allow me to bring in our third guest, Mr. Khurram Omar, National Secretary, IUML. Very vociferous the IUML has been, Mr. Omar, considering India really hasn't changed its stance. To come out and say that you condemn terrorism is not supporting, changing your stance on where India vis-a-vis Palestine is concerned.
Right. We have not, if you say so, we can agree to that India has not changed its stand and will not side with terrorism. Who started this terrorism? My learned friend, Mr. Sareen, said that in 1948, he took us there that the partition was done. It was an arm-twisting thing. In your home, you sit down and do the partition and decide whatever you say is right and the other party is wrong. Does that mean that everything is good now? We strongly condemn any atrocity done on any other country or community anywhere in the world, including our country, including Israel, including Palestine. That is our stand very clear, especially when women, children, and old are being killed from decades. It's not a story which started yesterday or 2 months back or 3 months back. Your editor Geeta ji has already explained the whole thing, what was the situation then and what is the situation now as far as the Palestine area of Gaza, area of Palestine, area of Israel is concerned. All these years, these atrocities by the Israelis were being done. We did the lip service here and there, and that's about all. Nobody is bothered about how many people killed, how many children killed, how many women killed, how many old persons killed during all these years since 1948 till date. The Western countries, especially America, Israel, they decided that they had done the partition and now they have the right, without the acknowledgement of the other party, which is the most affected. Nobody talked to them. Nobody consulted them. I don't agree to this fact that they had agreed to a certain partition thing and then they backed out. This is absolutely incorrect. This is absolutely wrong to say that. Now, who is doing the terrorism since 1948 till date? We condemn the attacks of Hamas also on the women and children in Israel. Our hearts reach out to them also. But this is happening today. What was happening since last 70, 75 years? Nobody is saying anything about it. Suddenly, the only thing we took up that Hamas, one organization, they started attacking Israel. They may have their own reasons. We don't agree to their attack on the women and children. If there is a war, let the
Mr.
two
Omar, do you
armies
condemn? Okay, can I encapsulate with what you're saying? Do you condemn the terrorism by Hamas as you support the cause of Palestine? Is that what you're trying to say?
terrorism, you call it terrorism. They call it as their fight for their
What do you
homeland.
call it, sir?
What? No. What? The thing is, आपके घर में कोई घुस गया, somebody entered your house and killing your children.
Mr. Umar, I'll ask you that question again. Maybe, okay, sir, calm down. You know, it's a very basic question. That's the reason why we are having this debate. You know, the fact is, a lot of us might stand with the cause of Palestine, but should we not unequivocally condemn the terrorism that was seen on the 7th of October? Yes or no? That's my question to you.
Any attack on women and children and old should be considered as terrorism. Yes. But
okay.
Tell me, just give me an answer. In your house, somebody, your neighbor has entered your house. They are attacking, they are killing, and it has been going on from last 70 plus years.
But Mr. Umar, that's the reason why we are having this debate. That's the sole reason for, having this debate, getting you on board.
That is a fact. That is a fact. And we should condemn. And now today they are talking about nuking Gaza.
Okay.
This is what
Mr. Sareen,
in the news today.
okay, sir. Okay, Mr. Sareen has been patient. We'll cut across to Mr. Sareen and then I'll go to Geeta on what has been, India's stand through it all. But Mr. Sareen, you wanted to come in for a rebuttal earlier. Go ahead, sir.
No, I want to come into a rebuttal not only to what Geeta was saying, but also what Mr. Umar is saying. And for a moment, I was pleasantly surprised that Mr. Umar is taking a unequivocal stand against terrorism, which Hamas had done, and he would name and shame them. But unfortunately, towards the end, the moment you add an if and a but, then you are equivocating, and that's what I believe Mr. Umar has done. But let me just break this down. Number one, there is this whole question of, Geeta raised about a right-wing government. Yeah, there is a right-wing government. But where is, Geeta, please tell me, where has the pushback come in Israel to the right-wing government? Hasn't it come from the Israelis who have been protesting very hard?
Absolutely.
And Netanyahu and his government has been losing its popularity. If you are talking about a 75, 77-year-old crisis, yeah, there will be these kind of phases when these kind of people will come into power. And then there is a very vibrant and dynamic civil society in Israel, and a large number of people who have always advocated a kind of a peaceful and negotiated solution. So to dump everything and kind of explain what Hamas has done on internal politics in Israel, in which a lot of blood-curdling statements might have come. But let's look at the blood-curdling statements coming from the Arab world or from Iran. What do they say? They also talk about complete extermination of the entire Jewish race. And they say not only in Palestine, anywhere in the world. That is their ideology. And in fact, and Mr. Umar should correct me if I'm wrong, they actually quote religion to reaffirm that point. But that is just one. Secondly, it's very easy to say that somebody came into my house. Whose house did Hamas enter? Hamas entered Israel's house. Hamas entered their house, and they entered their territory, which is their territory according even to the UN resolution.
But that's nobody. Mr. Sareen, nobody's contesting that. But what the point was being made of was 1948, and not so much of what Hamas did on the 7th of October. But you made your point. I want to bring in Geeta for a quick comment as well. Geeta, something we've not been able to touch upon has been what has been India's.
Preeti, can I just add one
say something here?
Sir, can I just add one sentence?
Sir, one sentence.
Just
yes.
one sentence. So, we keep talking.
Sir, I'm afraid your internet is not allowing you to make that one sentence. Your voice is, we are losing you. But Geeta, sir, Mr. Omar, 10 seconds, Mr. Omar, come in and then I'll go to Geeta. 10 seconds, sir, make your point.
Mr. Sareen is now asking today that whose house did Hamas enter? Exactly, whose house?
Okay.
Where was Israel? What is
Okay, Mr.
Israel?
Omar, 10 seconds. Sir, you've made your point that it started in 1948. Geeta, I'll bring you in to the conversation. Closing comments, and we're going to play those graphics out for our viewers as well. Where India's stand was concerned, right from the beginning, have we really changed in terms of policy, and how has it evolved?
No, we have not changed in terms of policy. See, when Prime Minister Modi traveled to Israel, he made a standalone visit to Israel and then a standalone visit to Palestine as well. But when it comes to this attack, there are two statements that came from Prime Minister Modi, unequivocally coming out and condemning the entire attack, calling Hamas a terrorist, calling this entire act a terrorist act and Hamas a terrorist organization. So there is no question of how India views the October 7th event. Does that change India's policy on Palestine itself? No, because Hamas, if you think, is representative of all Palestinians, that's not the case. West Bank is very different from Gaza, and the Palestinian Authority is very different from Hamas. So the position of India on a two-state solution remains, and it's not just India, it's almost all countries, including Israel's allies, the United States of America, and all the other Western countries, who actually come to one point and agree on one point, that is a two-state solution for Israel and the question of Israel and Palestine. And that's certainly something that is a continuum for India in its foreign policy, at least for now.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it at that. I appreciate Geeta for joining us. Both gentlemen, thank you for taking out the time. And for our viewers, you know, and I'm sure the visuals that you see are very compelling for all of us to take a stand in terms of the sheer barbarism of it on either sides of the divide, especially the kind of visuals we've seen coming up from the atrocities of Hamas. But maybe instead of hashtag I stand with Israel or hashtag I stand with Palestine or Hamas, hashtag maybe get more perspective. Leave it at that. Thank you for joining us. A quick break. Up next, Rahul Kamal.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
The gods have smiled at Mukesh Ambani. The chairman of Reliance Industry is the richest man in the country again, overtaking Hindenburg hit Gautam Adani in the 361 Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2023. The annual list released Tuesday puts Mukesh Ambani on the top with the wealth of more than 8 lakh crore rupees. Gautam Adani is the distant second with a net worth of 4.75 lakh crore. Vaccine king Cyrus Poonawalla, IT czar Shiv Nadar and the UK-based Gopi Chand Hinduja complete the top 5 list. According to the list, 12 Indians have a net worth of 1 lakh crore rupees and more, and the number of Indians with a wealth of above 1,000 crore rupees has risen by 76% in the last 5 years and now stands at 1,319. There are 278 new entrants in the list this year, and their cumulative wealth is a whopping 109 lakh crore rupees, more than the combined GDP of Singapore, UAE and Saudi Arabia. 55 people have, however, dropped out of the rich list, prominent among them Baiju Ravindran. The EdTech entrepreneur has been significant investor markdowns in the past couple of years, with his company's valuation dropping to $5 billion from a peak of $22 billion just a year ago. Youngest on the list is the 20-year-old Kaivalya Vora, the founder of Zepto. The youngest woman on the list is 38-year-old Neha Narkhede, co-founder of Confluent. The oldest on the rich list is M.R. Mehta, the 94-year-old founder of Precision Wires India. Ratan Tata also finds a mention in the list as a corporate baron in the maximum number of social media followers. The chairman emeritus of Tata Sons has more than 12 million followers hanging on to his ever post. Number 2 on the social media popularity stakes is Anand Mahindra with more than 10 million followers. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
The world of skincare is rapidly changing with new power ingredients making way. For instance, retinol can soon be passé probably thanks to bakuchiol, which does the same job as retinol with minimal side effects. Even Deepika Padukone stabs it. Retinol is not well tolerated by many, causing intense sensitivity to some.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Presented by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Growing Legacies.
Co-presented by Century Laminates by Manish Malhotra, fashion for your furniture.
Co-presented by
Macho Hind, बड़े आराम से.
Co-powered by PolicyBazaar.com, Har family hogi insured. Co-powered by The Bold Look of Kohler. Kirloskar.
Good evening and welcome. You're watching the news track. I'm Rahul Kanwal. India Today's ground reportage from Israel and from Lebanon coming up on the news track tonight.
Israel escalates Gaza offensive. Gaza bombed, tanks to roll in next. Hamas rocket strike South Israel. Hamas butchers babies. Will this explode into full-scale war? That is our big focus on News Track.
Let me take you through all the headlines we're tracking today. Israel escalates offensive against the Hamas. Over 2,500 terror targets struck in Gaza. Full-scale ground invasion next. IDF declares Gaza division area a closed military zone. Israeli soldiers make a stunning claim, say close to 40 babies have been killed by the Hamas. Massive humanitarian crisis unfolds in Gaza. Pakistani cricketer Muhammad Rizwan triggers a row, dedicates his match-winning knock against Sri Lanka to his brothers and sisters in Gaza. Election Commission revises Rajasthan Assembly poll dates to the 25th of November from the previously scheduled 23rd November, cites large-scale weddings and social gatherings as the reason for the change. Pathankot attack mastermind shot dead in Pakistan by unidentified assailants. Jaish terrorist Shahid Latif also plotted the Kokarnag encounter in September. It's day 5 of the Israel-Hamas war and a shadow of apocalypse is now looming over Gaza. The Israeli war machine has pulled out all guns, but Hamas is still firing rockets and striking South Israel. India's top conflict reporters Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra are near the Gaza border. Here is their latest dispatch.
Blocks after blocks smashed to rubble. Neighborhoods in the sealed-off Gaza pounded by unrelenting Israeli airstrikes.
The style of attack is barbaric. I mean, the visuals are ISO visuals. In a way, this is our 9/11, and we're standing strong. We're standing strong. We will overcome this.
Nearly 1,000 people have died in Gaza and 1,200 in Israel since Hamas launched a surprise attack on Saturday, triggering a war with Israel. Home to some 2 million people in an area of 140 square miles, more than half of them living in poverty. The tiny Gaza Strip has plunged into a humanitarian crisis, with food, fuel, electricity and water supplies cut off amidst the Israeli siege. Ordinary Palestinians crowded into UN schools and a shrinking number of safe neighborhoods. Meanwhile, sporadic fire by Hamas continued to pound southern Israeli territory. On Tuesday afternoon, barrages of rockets pounded Ashkelon and Tel Aviv. There were no immediate reports of casualties.
ये जो आप सामने टुकड़ा रखे हैं, ये है वो रॉकेट जो दरअसल आया हमास की ओर से। इसकी लंबाई देखिए, यही वो रॉकेट है, लगभग 1.5 फुट लंबा, जिसका अब ये खाली शेल है, लेकिन ये खाली शेल भी मैं उठा नहीं सकता। और ये रॉकेट जब घर में गिरा, इसने इस तरह की तबाही मचा। आप समझिए कि किस तरह की क्षमता हमास की है कि जो इतने बड़े बड़े रॉकेट वो इस्तेमाल कर रहा है और इससे नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है। और ये देखिए नुकसान भी कैसा है, उसकी क्षमता देखिए कि ये पूरी जो दीवार है 1.5 फीट चौड़ी, इस पूरी दीवार को उसने भेद दिया था पूरे घर को। और ये देखिए ऊपर तक नुकसान, ऊपर 3 से 4 मंजिला तक नुकसान हुआ है लोगों का।
With heavy mobilization along the Gaza Strip, Israel appears increasingly likely to launch a ground offensive into the 40-kilometer-long swath wedged among Israel, Egypt and the Mediterranean.
आप ये सोच नजर दौड़ाइए, पुलिस की एक गाड़ी यहाँ, पुलिस की एक गाड़ी यहाँ पर और सेना की गाड़ियाँ यहाँ पर। पूरा प्रयास यही है कि जल्द से जल्द अब यहाँ पर अगर हमास के आतंकवादी किसी पॉकेट में छिपे हैं, किसी बिल्डिंग में छिपे हैं, किसी नुक्कड़ पे, किसी छत पर, घर की छत पर या फिर किसी कमरे में, तो एक कमरे को खाली कराया जा रहा है। ये वो इलाका है जहाँ सबसे ज़्यादा असर था हमास के आतंकवादियों का दक्षिणी इजराइल में। घरों में घुसकर यहाँ लोगों को मौत के घाट उतारा था।
The United States expressed complete solidarity with Israel and warned Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group against supporting Hamas.
Let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening.
A momentous challenge ahead for Israel to rescue dozens of civilians and Israeli soldiers held hostage by Hamas militants safely from the narrow, densely populated Gaza Strip. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra from southern Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
One of the most terrifying tragedies of this war has been the killing of women and children. Israeli soldiers have claimed that close to 40 babies were beheaded by the Hamas at a kibbutz near the Gaza border. Images of blood-soaked cradles have stunned the world.
Unspeakable horrors of the Hamas terror attacks on Israel. Reports suggest Hamas terrorists brutally slaughtered, beheaded 40 babies in a kibbutz, Kfar Aza, near the Gaza Strip in the most monstrous way. This is what an Israeli general has claimed. Cribs overturned, strollers left behind. Barbaric enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The entire world has reeled in horror.
It's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down, families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. many of them reserves, who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well.
The Israeli government has sent out a big warning to the Hamas terrorists for allegedly killing innocent babies.
We had hundreds massacred, families wiped out in their beds and their homes, women brutally raped and murdered, over 100 kidnapped, including children. It's only gotten worse. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
Those who behead children, burn women and kill Holocaust survivors will be deleted. The clear message and full support I conveyed today to our dear fighters at the Gaza border.
Some soldiers say they found babies with their heads cut off and entire families gunned down in their beds.
We walk door after door, we kill a lot of the terrorists. We are stronger than them, they are aggressive, they are very bad. They cut head of children, cut head of women, but we are stronger than them.
The Israeli Defense Forces were removing the bodies of victims found in the area when they found the children's mutilated remains. According to reports, Hamas terrorists unleashed barbarism while the babies were sleeping with their parents, dragged them into the streets, beheading most of them and shooting the remaining dead, is what the Israeli government claims.
It's not a war. It's not a battlefield. You see the babies, the mother, the fathers in their bedrooms, in their protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war. It's not a battlefield. It's a massacre. It's a terror activity. So you can look it about on yourself. It's something that I never saw in my life.
Another horrific image from the kibbutz Reim shows the terrorists forcing their entry and lying in ambush. One of the terrorists is seen attacking a passenger car which arrives unsuspecting at the gate, opening fire from point-blank range and gunning down all occupants of the vehicle. More than 700 Israelis were killed in one day in the kibbutz near the Gaza border. The largest terror attack in a single day in the country's history, where 1,200 Israelis have died. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra across Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
Where does Israel's war against the Hamas go from here? For some very sharp insights, I'm joined on India Today's News Track, live and exclusive from London by Emmy-winning producer, award-winning author and journalist Adrian Levy. Our viewers in India would remember Mr. Levy as being the author of a book called The Siege, which was the definitive account of the 26/11 attacks. He's also researched intelligence agencies like RAW, like ISI, understands the workings of the Shin Bet and the Mossad, understands the ins and outs of how Israeli society works. Thank you very much, Mr. Levy, for joining us. This is a very tough time for Israel, and we appreciate your time and the benefit of your insights. So thank you.
It's a pleasure to join you, and hopefully we can cover some interesting ground here.
Oh, absolutely. I want to start by asking you, Mr. Levy, about how you see this war that Israel has now started against the Hamas in Gaza proceed. There's talk of the inevitability of a ground invasion, given that Gaza is densely populated and that Israel hasn't been able to occupy Gaza successfully before this, which is why in mid-2000s they chose to come back. How do you see this invasion progress?
Yeah, I think there are no really easy options. I think there's a time of national mourning taking place as Israel begins to calibrate what actually happened over the last several days in terms of the massacres at the festival site at Kfar Aza, the massacres in Sderot and Kibbutz Be'eri, and that process of accounting and working out what happened in terms of this devastating intelligence failure, and then the slow reaction and counter-reaction by IDF Obviously, it's not simply Mossad, which is the external intelligence agency that's the spotlight is on. It's also Shin Bet, the domestic intelligence agency, let's say, like IB in India, and Amman, which is the very powerful intelligence agency attached to the military, a bit like MI in India, military intelligence in India. So this audit, if you like, is taking place now, and at the same time, rapid planning. Another difficulty, of course, is there's a big disconnect between the intelligence establishment and the military and Netanyahu. And that set in through political measures that he was taking to isolate the judiciary, creating, as your viewers will have seen, mass protests in Israel. So the attacks came at a time where there was huge polarization and a disconnect between military intelligence and the Prime Minister, who drafted extremists into his cabinet who the military also did not like. So what will the military do next? I mean, we're waiting to see if there'll be a cabinet of national unification of sorts, whether there can be more flavors that come into that cabinet. But a ground invasion certainly looks tricky and, if not disastrous, potentially for Palestinian people, of course, and for Israel too. We look at where Israel has before made these kind of incursions. They've never ended well. Look at 82 in Lebanon. That led to the creation of Hezbollah. And then from that, we saw those massive attacks on American bases, the Marines and spates of kidnapping, etc. And the fully fledged involvement of Iran with Hezbollah on a border. Other calculations and things that you should consider are what will happen in Syria. On the Syrian border, there's been a bit of tit-for-tat shelling and bombing.
So we'll unpack those one by one. Let's just spend a moment on the intelligence failure which you referred to in your first answer. Now, you, in your book, The Exile, looked at Al-Qaeda in Iran. You've looked at 26/11, which you researched. So you've studied failure by intelligence agencies at a very deep professional level. Now, the Shin Bet, the Mossad, amongst the world's most fearsome intelligence agencies, and it bedevils people who are watching at this time when they wonder how could the world's best intelligence agencies not see what was happening right below their nose in daylight.
Yeah, well, three quick hot responses to that. We don't know what they knew. I mean, Egypt at the moment is saying that it warned Amman and gave very specific warnings about a build-up of rockets and other material, and that those warnings were not processed or acted upon. There's also some kind of suggestion that there was an internal disconnect between the three or four different agencies that were considering material as to what was going in Gaza. There's a political paralysis in Egypt whereby politicians are disregarding military and intelligence establishments. And, a very important thing to say here is that intelligence is overly fetishized, if you like. We think that these agencies can see and hear everything because we see stories about Pegasus, we hear about incursions into every kind of messenger and social media app, and we assume that their grid is a grid that will miss nothing. It's simply not the case. Analysis is what matters, not simply data, and the speed and depth of analysis is what actually dictates the effectiveness of intelligence. So what's gone on here won't be necessarily a collection issue, but it will more than likely be an analytical issue. I mean, India has faced these issues in the past as well. However quickly India can process information on terror events that are taking place in Kashmir or in the Punjab, in other places, it has to be able to analyze the data coming in as well as deciding, whether or not the data is valid. So I guess that will be something that everybody will be looking at. Netanyahu is massively, massively unpopular. The Prime Minister, remember that. And this has been an issue. He doesn't have the coherent leadership, and perhaps that might be at the core of what we're seeing here, as well as devastating planning, effective planning, I hate to say, by Hamas.
No, so let's spend a moment on the kind of military precision that the Hamas was able to engineer. Now, you know the general military capability associated with the Hamas. Now, this seemed to be a massive, audacious attack executed with very high-end military precision. Does the Hamas have the operational expertise, in your view, to be able to do this themselves? Or is it highly likely that whether it is the Iranians or other military forces like professional trained military personnel who are helping them plan this attack, because they are attacking the Iron Wall, there's the Iron Dome, all of which Israel has as counter defensive, and they're able to breach the fence and send all these records in, all these rockets in, and the system doesn't respond in the way that it should have. So this has been planned in great detail. How do you think they did it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think it's taken an enormous amount of time. You know, they refer particularly to a trigger being the Israeli raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. That's why they gave the name to this operation as Al-Aqsa Flood. And that was a year back. So it would suggest that, you know, there's at least a year of sharpened planning, training, preparation. But if you look at the components in the operation, they're audacious and simple. The kind of parasending and paraflying, the use of multiple barrages of rockets, the simple targeting of the wall with bulldozers, etc., and the hitting of successive targets along or parallel and adjacent to the Gaza border, that rave site, etc., which were all soft targets, and if anything, filled with people who are pacifist or left-leaning and looking for a two-state solution. So yes, extraordinary preparations. There's no evidence yet as to what help has been given by logistics, training, otherwise by Iran. Obviously, we know that Hamas is extremely close to the Iranian leadership, and previously weapons supply, cash, etc., has been given to them. There's also a connection and sheltering that's given in the Lebanon, and there has been you know, much work and research done looking at that. But it's too early yet to say if there's definitive proof linking Iran. Iran celebrated and very quickly, for political reasons, distanced itself slightly from the planning of events while celebrating their nature. So these are processes and analytical pathways which Israel will have to go down with the help of other global intelligence agencies over the next months. And it may take that long to debone this and work this out.
As of now, this is largely the Israel Defense Forces versus the Hamas. There's been some sporadic fire from the Hezbollah, which the Israeli artillery responded to. Is it inevitable almost that the Hezbollah will get involved? Do you see this escalate? You mentioned Syria earlier. Do you see Syria getting involved militarily? Can this stay restricted to Israel versus Gaza, or is an escalation quite probable?
I don't think it is probable, but it is an apocalyptic scenario whereby we see Israel surrounded by firefights on the Syrian border, on the border with Lebanon, with the Gaza border, and of course the West Bank is also in turmoil. And then there's the internal Arab-Israeli population. As we know, there was an uprising from that section in 2021 and 2022. So what this points to, the first thing to say, sort of reflecting back on that, is that Lebanon is in a very, very difficult situation itself right now. It's facing near bankruptcy. Its economy is in free fall. And it would be very difficult for Hezbollah to usher in that kind of conflict with Lebanon ailing so badly after the ship carrying nitrates and fertilizer exploded in Beirut in the harbour, devastating the city and compounding its economic crisis. So I think that's unlikely. Syria too is preoccupied, although Iran has been effective in building an alliance in Syria up until now. It seems unlikely that will be something that they'll press. So this will become an issue that will probably restrict itself to Gaza, and then likely the West Bank will become involved. So what does this tell us? It tells us that there can be no real military solution. Again, you know, this is a political crisis, and it's one brought around by Netanyahu. He abandoned a two-state solution, failed to recognize that there was a future for Palestine and Palestinians, and persuaded a group of Israelis that the only answer was sheer force. Sheer force has not worked again. It didn't work in 2014, in 2008, in 2003. It didn't work in 1982 with the invasion of Lebanon. So we're left with many people asking what will be the political settlement that has to be made.
But
And
is
when
anyone
can
in
that be
Israel
discussed?
even discussing a political settlement, especially given the barbarity of this attack, given the kind of elements in the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu, who himself is right, and then he's got extreme right ministers?
Yeah.
Does this attack
There's no
take away
time.
whatever
There's no-
minuscule opportunity there was for any settlement? Because no one's discussing that actively any longer.
It's too soon right now for anyone to be raising that, but those thoughts and discussions are happening privately. You know, you're seeing an enormous percentage of people disaffected with Netanyahu. You know, he has advocated for himself as a strongman leader who would resist political solutions, and he has been overseeing the country at its probably one of its worst ever defeats, an intelligence disaster. And so the political price for this will be enormous. He's trying to deflect already by blaming protesters for weakening the unification of the state, but he was the leader who came from offering military solutions. So you'll see these conversations happening privately when the mourning is done and when the shape of the regional conflict becomes clearer. There will again be a pressure placed on Netanyahu, and it will come from all sides. Remember the Saudi interest in evolving its peace plan for better or worse. That also is being protected by America. So Saudi has an interest, Mohammed bin Salman, in resurrecting that plan if it can. But of course, what we have to first see is what happens in Gaza. We have to watch closely what happens over the next week to 2 weeks, and it looks like a tragedy is unfolding there.
No, but given that Gaza has very heavy population density, do you think that this attack will actually lead to a lot of Israeli deaths as well? Because A, you've got many Israelis hostage. B, obviously the Hamas has thought this through. They've wargamed this at this level. They know what is coming. And are they potentially ready for it? Because if they're in street to street kind of conflict, entrenched in windows, behind buildings, they can make it very difficult for the IDF to come in.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's unthinkable, and the majority of Palestinians are not to blame and do not support Hamas. Maybe less than a quarter of Palestinians in Gaza have shown any support for Hamas at all. And so collective punishment is being reaped, which will be a hideous thing for the Palestinians and for outsiders to watch, and potentially war crimes may even be committed, and Israel's been warned about that because of the intensity of its bombing. These are hard issues to get into right now because of the state of mourning, as we all come to terms with what's happened more than 1,000 days.
You mentioned the Israel-Saudi Arabia deal, where Tel Aviv and Riyadh were on the verge, with the help of the United States, of signing a historic deal. Is that now buried, at least in the foreseeable future?
I think the problem has always been the Netanyahu side and his inability to balance his extremist coalition. I think the Saudis are prepared to step forward and recognise, and other states will follow, potentially even Pakistan, where there have been feelers put out very sensitively, even though the Pakistani state denies it. But can Netanyahu now do that? This is what's going to be interesting. He may not survive this disaster himself. So I think the political ramifications inside Israel are not clear. And likewise, although America is moving at speed and others to try and shore up the Saudi deal, it's not yet clear whether that will be able to progress or realign itself. It is not clear.
How do you see this conflict in the Middle East potentially impact the other flashpoints globally? The Russia-Ukraine war, China has been eyeing Taiwan for a very long time. Do they sense that the US is occupied, the rest of the world has its eyes on Russia, Ukraine, on the Middle East, and therefore does it increase the prospects of China making a dash for the Taiwan Straits?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we saw also with Ukraine that although that thought may have entered the private discussions that took place in Beijing, they saw the European response and NATO response and decided they didn't want that. I mean, China's economy is going through some upheaval at the moment in terms of its enormous property bubble and the property crisis in Shanghai. So I think what they're looking for is commerce and trade solutions. Also, in the new multipolar world, they've advanced themselves as interlocutors in other disputes. Remember, there are back channels taking place in real time now that don't involve America for once. China has been one of those interlocutors. Saudi has been another. Look at the Yemen back channel in that dispute there. That's not American run. And so in this new multipolar world, inside which India is also rising, it's hard to see that the conflict would spread in that sense. Whether or not there will be agents provocateurs who exacerbate the problem, that is likely. Iran will do so, Russia will do so, and North Korea will do so in terms of who they supply, where their munitions and arms and sensitive technologies go. That undoubtedly will happen, which will fan the flames. But whether it will spread into a broader conflict, I think that is unlikely. The real issue right now will be what happens on the Lebanon border and the regional crisis, what form that takes if Israel does take a tremendously difficult decision and go in with ground forces in Gaza.
We saw America respond to terror attacks by attacking Afghanistan. Separately, they also attacked Iraq. And many analysts now think those were overreactions. Because nothing much came of the battle in Afghanistan in the end. Maybe America didn't need to spend so much money, lose so many lives. Do you think Israel also, tough as it seems to say, to suggest, but could Israel also run the risk of potential overreaction, which ultimately proves much costlier?
It's absolutely the fear that everybody has. America, at one stage, in November and December 2001, held the high moral ground, and the world grieved with Americans seeing what happened on 9/11. And yet what happened afterwards, in the war on terror, as you pointed out, led to the death of at least 1 million people and $6 trillion of damage spent, unnecessary and illegal wars that took place, and the disintegration of societies in Libya, in Iraq, etc. So, and Afghanistan, of course, entropy in Pakistan. America also, and it's really important to remember this, did massive damage through use of its security intelligence service and intelligence contractors to its own rules-bound system. It engaged in disappearances, in actions and interrogation actions that have been ruled to be torture, ruled repeatedly, including by the US Congress. And in doing so, by stepping around its obligations internationally and its international conventions, the Geneva Conventions, etc., the rules of war, commonly described as the rules of war, it undid its own rules-bound system. And so America ended up being an enormous loser and, in fact, creating massive instability around the world for Americans abroad, for American service people abroad. And the result has been also a political price to pay for the intelligence services, particularly CIA and its contractors. So Israel has to be aware of this, and no doubt these conversations are taking place right now, pointing to the overreaction. Vengeance is not going to be a solution for Israel. It was not a solution for President Bush and for America.
The Yom Kippur War of 1973 was one of the big failures of the Israeli intelligence. Do you think that this will probably go down in history as the biggest failure? Some people are calling this Israel's 9/11, but the counter to that is that 9/11 involved the use of aeroplanes as missiles targeted at buildings, and that was quite unexpected. It was a black swan event, as it were. Whereas this is not really 9/11, because this is the kind of attack that Israel should have been expecting, even if it weren't, and therefore it's not like using aeroplanes as missiles. This is something that Israel really should have been wargaming and preparing for. So is it really Israel's 9/11 or not?
Well, there's two questions wrapped up in there. First of all, there are massive similarities in that both are enormous intelligence failures. So the important thing to remember is that in 1999 and 2000, the CIA had active intelligence from Malaysia and other places, Yemen, etc., that showed that an operation was brewing. They knew who was likely involved in it, and they knew that America would be the target. And that intelligence was stovepiped disastrously and kept away from FBI and internal security agencies. That's been well documented inside the 9/11 report, etc., and deboned. And of course, this now with Gaza and the attacks made at the weekend is an enormous intelligence failure too. So in that sense, the comparison is worth making. But more than that, in terms of its scale and its impact on the reputations of the intelligence service, the military, and the Netanyahu government, this is undoubtedly one of the worst crises that Israel has faced.
Where do you see this go from here? What happens next? What's your sense of what lies ahead in the next 7, 10, 15 days?
I think there's an enormously difficult auditing period where Israel has to come to terms with what took place. And hopefully inside that, there'll be some kind of transparency whereby people will get to understand why this has happened, what its cost really was. And also, they have to fight the false news. You'll see stories racing around about babies being decapitated. In the fog of war, horrible things are being said, some of which may not be true. So actually understanding what happened, the true nature of the horror, that'll be one key thing. 2, understanding the consequences of the hostage taking. That is a human crisis that's going to burn on for potentially years. If we look at what's happened before, Hamas has threatened to execute hostages, which is a chilling reminder of Islamic State and Al-Qaeda's strategies, something horrendous. And then there's the refugee crisis and the humane tragedy that's taking place in Gaza, which we have to watch and unpick and feel for the people in Gaza who have nowhere to run to, and wonder at what their futures may be. So there's so many things to weigh up and consider, and so many things for societies and the international communities to consider, because the failure has been also international, not simply a failure of politics in Israel and its right-wing government, but a failure internationally to address this issue and to give Palestinians a sense of hope, or even an effective diplomatic runway, of which there is none.
Adrian Levy, your books are very forensic in the way that you approach matters, and that's exactly been your approach during this conversation as well, for being as objective, blunt, truthful as is possible. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking our time in a very tough hour for Israel and speaking to us and sharing your thoughts. That's well-known journalist, author, award-winning producer Adrian Levy talking to us about the Hamas attack and Israel's counteroffensive. Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much.
Take a look at the man on your screen. This is Muhammad Deif, the mastermind of Saturday's Hamas attack on Israel. He's the commander of Hamas's military wing and is also called the guest because that's what his name Deif translates to in English, and because he doesn't stay in the same place for long. He's known as the cat with 9 lives. In Palestine, he's escaped several assassination attempts. But with Israel's Operation Iron Swords now in full flow, will the guest finally check out?
Israel's biggest ever offensive against Hamas terrorists. After the bloodiest terror attacks on its soil, Israel is baying for revenge. With never before seen scale of attacks inside Gaza. And this man, Muhammad Deif, is one of the prime targets in the Israeli terror hunt. Deif, notoriously called the guest, is believed to be the mastermind of the coordinated terror attacks. And also head of the infamous Al-Qassam rocket brigade. On Wednesday, Israel jets bombed the Hamas military chief's home in Gaza, killing several of his family members, including his brother. But there's no news on Deif, the shadowy figure and most wanted man now in Israel. Sources say it was in May 2021, after an Israeli raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque, that Deif began planning the terror strike. Committed to an armed resistance against Israel, Deif has quickly risen to prominence within Hamas's military unit, the Al-Qassam Brigades. Deif has survived at least 4 Israeli assassination attempts, while losing an eye and multiple limbs. Can Israel smoke Deif out, or will he survive to plot another blow for Israel? Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining us now, live and exclusive on India Today, is Mr. Ehud Olmert, a former Prime Minister of Israel, served as the leader of the country from 2006 to 2009, was in fact in charge of governing Israel at the time of the 22-day war on Gaza in late 2008. Mr. Olmert, welcome to India Today. You're joining us at a time when the world's eyes are on Israel. So much sympathy in India and elsewhere with the people of Israel on the back of this barbaric attack by the Hamas. Could I start by getting you to explain your sense of the current state of play in Israel, the counter-offensive being mobilized by the Israeli Defense Forces? It seems as if Israel is getting set for a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. You were in charge of the country when the war with Gaza happened in 2008. Could you give us a sense of how this confrontation is shaping up from your perspective, sir?
Well, first of all, I have to say, to make it very clear and particularly, it's very important for me that the public opinion in your great country, India, will understand it. We are not set out to invade the Gaza district. We don't want to invade, we don't want to occupy. We want to reach out to the terrorists that perpetrated the mass killing of Israeli citizens in the last few days in the most brutal and inhuman manner. You know, more than 1,200 Israeli citizens were butchered and murdered. Babies, 2 years old, 3 years old, the mothers were raped in front of the children, and then they got a bullet in the head and they were massacred with their parents and with their grandparents. So this is not something that any country can tolerate. And Israel set out to reach out for those who did it and to take the necessary measures in order to make sure that it will never be repeated again. But we don't have a war against those who are not involved. The innocent Israeli citizens were victims of terror and of brutality, and I certainly don't want any non-involved in Gaza to have to go through the suffering of war for something that they were not part of. One thing I can guarantee you, no Israeli will do anything similar to what these Palestinians, radicals, extremists, fundamentalists, ISIS-type people did to our citizens.
Mr. Olmert, given the fearsome capabilities of the Shin Bet, the domestic intelligence agency, the Mossad, the external intelligence agency of Israel, where do you think the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went wrong in not being able to join the dots? A lot of the training seemed to be happening in daylight, quite clearly visible to CCTV cameras, I'm sure, to your ground human intelligence assets, to technical surveillance assets. How did the world's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus, in your view, miss all these signs?
Well, I'll tell you, there are two things. Independent, separate, but both have contributed to what we have seen now. One thing is that when Netanyahu became Prime Minister, he announced that his foremost priority is to destroy Hamas. Unlike me, I mean, in comparison to me, he said, I didn't destroy Hamas, he will destroy Hamas, with a very strong hand attitude. towards the Hamas. In reality, he actually did the opposite. The choice that he had was to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority and with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, towards a political solution of the Palestinian issue on the basis of a two-state solution, or to reduce the impact and the influence and the importance and the centrality of the Palestinian Authority. And the only way to do it was to promote Hamas. So the same organization that he swore to destroy, he actually promoted. And that has created a lot of expansion in the military strengths of Hamas, and he allowed hundreds of millions of dollars that came from Qatar to finance the Hamas, and that opened up also options for Iran to play a much greater role than they should have been allowed to play in promoting the status of Hamas. So this is one thing. The other thing is a question about the failure, or the appearance of failure, of one of the most sophisticated intelligence systems there are, which is the Israeli system. Israeli military intelligence, Israeli secret service, which are known to be really one of the best in the world. The truth is that we knew all the details. We saw everything. We saw all the preparations. Nothing was hidden from our eyes and the eyes of the very sophisticated cyber system that we have developed in Israel. We just were arrogant to believe that they can do it. So we saw all the preparations, and yet we said, they are not going to do it. I mean, this is just practice, this is just fooling out. They are not being able to accomplish what we see that they are training to do. And therefore, even in the last couple of days before the operation, we pulled down a military division from Gaza, from the nearby Gaza, and moved it into another area. And we have actually emptied all of the area from a major, robust military presence, which was based not on not knowing all the details of all kinds of preparations, but of the arrogance that we believe that no one will dare do what they seem to have prepared to do. But they did it, and we were caught in surprise.
There's been some talk about a unity government of the more moderate factions in Israel coming together with the right-wing government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you see that, Mr. Olmert, as being a possibility, that a cross-party unity coalition government getting together in this hour of crisis in Israel?
Well, I have my doubts about it. I think that when it comes to the military operations will take place according to the military plans, to the plans of the commanding generals of the Israeli army, and regardless of whether there is a unity government or not. So I'm not certain that that will make a difference. On the other hand, the present government of Netanyahu is made up of some very extremist right-wing messianic elements which have a strategic goal of eventually annexing all of the Palestinian territories and getting rid of the Palestinians or expelling them. This is something which is totally intolerable, unacceptable, and will never be supported by any part, a major part of the Israeli population. And the question is whether the more moderate elements in Israeli politics, which are now in opposition, want to be part of a government with these elements of messianic groups that are, I think, are not going to be not helpful and not supportive to achieve the national goals, which must be the priority of our country.
Now, when you were Prime Minister, Mr. Olmert, you took on the Hamas at the Gaza Strip, and yet Israel decided that Gaza was ungovernable, pulled back, the elections were held, the Hamas won. You can raise all the buildings you want. What do you think will be the end of the road for the Hamas? Because with all the attacks of the past, Israel hasn't been able to finish off the Hamas. Do you think this time that is possible? Or do you think ultimately you will have to negotiate, you will have to work towards a two-state solution? Because without that, this problem will keep popping its head up in some fashion or the other.
There is always a danger that this problem will continue to be part of our agenda and part of our lives, and we have experienced not only in our part of the world, but in other parts of the world, that sometimes these kinds of conflicts last longer than they should. And so this is one danger. On the other hand, by the way, when I was Prime Minister, there were elections in the territories, and Hamas was very successful in these elections because of the radical anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish attitude, which has characterized them from day one. They never wanted to make peace with Israel. They never wanted to negotiate politically with the state of Israel. They wanted to fight Israel. But I think as a result of the operations in the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009, at the time that I was in charge, the conflict has been reduced to an entirely different scale. A scale which has lasted for almost 15 years. There were occasional confrontations, but nothing of the nature of what we have witnessed in the last few days. So while all these occasional confrontations between us and the Palestinians in Gaza were not always pleasant, and that it required occasionally to take severe measures against them, it was tolerable and manageable. What we were not prepared for and didn't address ourselves in time for the threats that were coming from Gaza to deal with it was the kind of military aggressive brutal operation that they perpetrated Saturday. So I think that Saturday, for the first time, they've changed the scale, the level, and the intensity of this conflict. And now it remains to be seen what will be the impact of the counter-offensive of Israel. I want to say two things, and it's very, very important for me that people in India will understand it and will sympathize with it. We are going to be very aggressive. We are going to go every place in Gaza and look out for the terrorists and do what needs to be done in order to deal with terrorists. We'll do every possible effort in order to avoid any unnecessary confrontations with non-involved in the civilian society. And we expect that the international public opinion, definitely the public opinion of Indians, and there are many Muslims living in India, and I appeal to them as well, they will understand that if sometimes the pictures that they will see from Gaza will not be pleasant, this is an unavoidable, inevitable result of the need to get rid of the terrorists in order to change the quality of life for both Palestinians and Israelis in that part of the world for a long time.
Okay. For sharing your thoughts on the future of this conflict and also the lapses that led to this Hamas attack, Ehud Olmert, thank you very much for joining us. That's the former Prime Minister of Israel, a man who has led the country in a battle against the Hamas, talking about the challenges at hand now and about the level of aggression that we're likely to see from Israel as they go all out to finish the Hamas once and for all. Ehud Olmert for joining us on India Today. Thank you, sir.
are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Colors Bicolor makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again, you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. And look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
Good evening, viewers. Let's take a look at the weather report across the major cities this evening. Thiruvananthapuram is at 29 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 38. Mumbai is at 33 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 91. Panji is at 30 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 125. Ahmedabad is at 35 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 104. Bhopal is at 32 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 107. Jaipur is at 35 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 136. Delhi is at 34 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 170. Srinagar is at 24 degrees Celsius with AQI being 98. Lucknow is at 34 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 200. Patna is at 34 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 290. Kolkata is at 33 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 252. Hyderabad is at 31 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 169. Bangalore is at 27 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 93. Chennai is at 32 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 155. This is all we have for you in this segment. Hope wherever you are, you find favorable weather around you. Keep watching India Today for all the weather updates with me AI Sana all through the day.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
Co-presented by हर घर का हीरो ग्रीन प्लाई का E0. Co-powered by the bold look of Kohler.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news. Newsmakers' talking points. Our big talking point today remains in West Asia. A Hamas terror survivor will be joining us as one of our exclusives tonight. We'll have plenty more, including top voices from the Middle East on both sides of that divide. We will give you all sides of that story. But first, the 9 headlines at 9. Israel escalates its offensive against Hamas, claims over 2,500 terror targets in Gaza struck down. Palestinians accuse Israel of committing war crimes by targeting civilians. No more electricity in Gaza as its sole power plant runs out of fuel, plunging it deeper into a humanitarian crisis. The war death toll crosses to over 1,700 deaths in Israel and Palestine. Election Commission revises Rajasthan Assembly poll dates to November 25th from the earlier date of 23rd November, cites wedding season rush as reason for revision. One day after allowing the termination of a 26-week pregnancy, Supreme Court bench halts the abortion after an AIMS report suggests the child may be born alive. Larger bench to take a final decision. CBI lodges a fresh FIR against news portal NewsClick over allegations of violating the Foreign Funds Act. CBI alleges NewsClick received over 28 crore rupees in foreign funding. Reports claim SEBI probing Adani Group's relationship with a fund incorporated in the British Virgin Islands. Probe into whether Adani Group violated share ownership rules. Issue likely to come up before the court soon. Pathankot mastermind shot dead in Pakistan. Jaish terrorist Shahid Latif also plotted the Kokarnag encounter in September.
which led to the deaths of 3 Jawans. Another earthquake hit strife-torn Afghanistan just days after over 2,000 lives were lost in multiple quakes on the 7th of October. And India scores its second consecutive victory in the World Cup, defeats Afghanistan convincingly. Rohit Sharma, the star, records a 7th World Cup ton to break Sachin's record. But tonight we start, as always, this week with the latest updates that are coming in on the war in West Asia. Israel and Hamas now in an increasingly escalating conflict, unrelenting Israeli airstrikes pounding Gaza. The head of the Gaza Energy Authority saying the only power plant along the Gaza Strip has stopped working due to a lack of fuel. There is now no electricity in Gaza. Israeli forces have flattened entire districts. Over 1,000 Palestinians have been reportedly killed. The real extent, meanwhile, of Hamas's terrorist attacks are revealed as Israeli forces enter villages near the Gaza border. The forces found bodies of slain residents lying outside burnt-out homes in Kibbutz Kafar. Another horrific massacre took place in Beeri Kibbutz. Footage from Beeri shows terrorists targeting civilians. The death toll in Israel has crossed 1,200. Hamas has also hit back by firing multiple rockets towards the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv on Wednesday. According to reports, many planes were unable to land at the airport. Flights are being diverted or told to circle the area. Meanwhile, Lebanon-based Hezbollah, a terror group, has claimed responsibility for the anti-tank guided missile attack on Israel. Hezbollah says it was responsible for firing precision missiles on Israel. It was a response to Israeli attacks this week that left 3 of its fighters dead. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in Israel on Thursday in the wake of the war. Blinken will hold talks with Israeli governments on any kind of support the Americans can extend to Tel Aviv. Reporters have been on ground zero in different parts of Israel. They have been giving us stories of all that's been happening on the ground in a country that is clearly now at war with the Hamas. The fact is, ordinary people are paying the price. Gaza in particular is running out of basic supplies, an unfolding major humanitarian crisis there, even as Israel comes to terms with the attack on its civilians. Let's take a look at tonight's top story.
This is what is left of the port city of Gaza. Over 900 dead, 4,500 wounded, and nearly 1,80,000 people left homeless. The ordinary Gazan is paying the price for Hamas's brutalities in Israel. With unprecedented airstrikes, the once bustling city now resembles a ghost town. Many Gazans fled from their homes, leaving everything they owned to get to safer points, knowing that the Hamas's atrocities would mean a hit back by Israel. People are now taking shelter in hospitals with just a bag of their belongings. Refugees in their own land.
We were at our homes. Then we got information saying we have to leave our house immediately, to leave our neighborhood because it is under attack. We took ourselves, children and grandchildren and daughter-in-laws, and we ran away. I can say that we became refugees. We don't have safety or security. What's this life? This is not life.
There's death everywhere, amid the rubble, on the streets and even in homes. After a night of airstrikes, it's become routine now for people to begin the painful hunt for their loved ones. And sometimes that means digging through the debris of now destroyed buildings. The body of a 4-year-old girl was pulled out from the debris, which was supposed to be a safe hideout. Her family had fled from their homes to the heart of the city in search of safety, only to find death.
They were taking refuge next to the stairs where it could have been a safe place. They targeted them and killed them.
There are many such families who fled to the city of Khan Yunis, assuming it's safer, only to find that they've reached the heart of the conflict.
If we stayed in our houses, we die. If we go on streets, we die. Oh, my beloved brother, he fled from one place to another. May his soul rest in peace. I have no people left except 2. Please God, don't take anyone else. This is enough. I can't handle more. I hope I die before them all.
Gaza is running out of basic supplies as Israel has cut off electricity, food and water supply. Volunteers on ground are now attempting to help Gazans cope. But as airstrikes continue, it's an arduous task to distribute supplies.
We are on the ground doing everything we can to make sure the people in need, the ones who fled their homes and residing in shelters, are getting the food and help they need to be able to survive. Today, we set out to reach 180,000 together with UNRWA that are residing in shelters with ready-to-eat food, including fresh bread from bakeries that are still able to operate in Gaza.
Gaza has been a hotbed of Israeli strikes before, but never in this scale. There's death and destruction everywhere, and with Israel vowing to end Hamas, the ordinary Gazans are stuck in the crossfire with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Bureau Report, India Today.
So you have Gaza, a virtual ghost town now, being reduced to rubble. And you've had Israel and the border towns in Israel struggling to recover with death and destruction. Innocent civilians on both sides are suffering. I'm going to speak to, therefore, both sides on the show tonight. Earlier in the day, I spoke to Amit Musai, who attended the musical fest which was attacked by Hamas. He was one of the survivors. More than 250 people at that music concert were killed by the Hamas terrorists. First, listen in to his story. Joining us now today is a very special guest. I'm joined by one of the survivors of the carnage at the music festival wherein hundreds of people were killed. I'm joined by Amit Musai. He is a survivor. Amit, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, words fail me to express our condolences, our deep sorrow. I'm sure you lost friends, but tell us exactly what happened on that fateful day when this music festival where you were at, Amit, was targeted.
Thank you very much for having me, Rajdip. We've attended a massive festival with 3,500 guests. Not all of them were Israelis. There were guests from all over the world to celebrate life, music, and peace and love. That is the goal of this music festival. The festival took place very close to the Gaza Strip. There was no fear among the partygoers. As we've just enjoyed the music, we've enjoyed everything that was there. All the atmosphere was really superb, and the place was highly secured as well. There was a lot of police, a lot of security forces, ambulances, and everything necessary for such a massive event. Unfortunately, at around 6:30 a.m., the music suddenly stopped. We didn't realize what's happening. And we saw rockets in the sky. I've a video of that if you'd like to share. Once that we saw the rockets, we've done whatever we are trained to do here in Israel. So a rocket situation from Gaza, unfortunately, is quite common. And we took we lay on the ground, we've bended over, and we've covered our heads. We try to help to others to find shelter. But eventually we realized this is an ongoing situation. There's not going to be a cease in the stop in the rockets very soon, and we are very, very close to where the rockets are falling. So we've decided to go back to our campsite because this was a long festival, so many people have built tents. We took just our personal gear and ran to the vehicle. Unfortunately, many other attenders of the festival were not so fortunate, and they were just stayed there. While we were trying to take the vehicle, I am a tour guide in Israel, so I have some off-road driving skills, and I know my land. I know where to go when necessary. So possibly it's my skill that saved me as I was finding the way back to the main road and went to the opposite direction from where the terrorists came. En route, unfortunately, we saw at least one vehicle which was completely shattered. All the windows were blown, and we saw a dead body in that vehicle. We didn't realize yet that armed monsters made their way into the festival arena and started to shoot people that are dear to us. We finally found some shelter in
Do
a
you know
coffee
at all
place.
how many people? Right. You found shelter in a coffee place, but how many people, Amit, were there? Do you have any idea just how big this group was which had surrounded the festival? Because you said there were armed guards at the festival, so it wasn't as if there wasn't any security to the festival. So clearly these armed guards were overpowered by these terrorists, by the Hamas terrorists.
Correct, sir. So the terrorists, when they arrived, they didn't came with just handguns. So when we speak about securing a festival in Israel, usually you would not see rifles with the security. You would see handguns because they are preparing maybe for a small situation, but nothing as big as we've expected. We were completely surprised. They came with rifles. They came with heavy weapons. If you have footage of the festival arena in the aftermath, you would see a lot of burn spots as they've used grenades and RPGs. Unfortunately, dear friends of mine, 3 of them, had met the terrorists somewhere en route. They were still on their way to the festival as they decided to show up a bit later than when I did. We found their vehicle only, but we lost track of them. We don't know what happened to them. We have a very, very deep fear for their life, and we don't know what happened to them, as we found their car completely destroyed by bullet holes, and also there is an RPG missile that is just next to their car. Possibly it was shot on their car, but never managed to explode. So our friends are Adir and Shiraz Tamam. They are parents to 2 daughters in the ages of my own daughters. This couple are my best friends, and they are the second parents of my daughters. They are basically my family that now gone missing. They have another friend that was with them in the car. Her name is Celine. She's a mother to a 6-year-old baby, and now this baby has nowhere to get resources as he is breastfeeded.
So most of the people at this festival, Amit, were they young people or were they across all ages at the festival when it was targeted by the terrorists?
I would say that the average age of the party attenders would be 20 to 25. I am 40, but this is my music genre. Besides the security guards, a lot of the operators of the festival would be people in their 40s, some of them are in their 50s. So I would say that the range of ages would be in this younger generation between the 20 and 40 years old people.
Have you come to terms, you and your friends come to terms with what happened? You go to a musical festival to celebrate, and instead it becomes many of you become victims of a terror attack. We saw that in Mumbai in 26/11, where those who were sitting in restaurants were targeted. One moment you're sitting very happily chatting with friends, next moment you see blood spattered around you. Have you been able to at all come to terms with the horrendous nature of what happened that day?
I think just in the recent days, I'm starting to realize what terror I've managed to escape from. It was a massacre over there. It was a massacre. And those people of Hamas, and it's the entire people of the Gaza Strip, I consider all of them Hamas because they support Hamas. Hamas is their ruling entity. You should imagine them like ISIS. You gave a good example on the bomb attacks and the terror attacks on Mumbai. But this was terrible. They were not there to take hostages. They were there to kill, and they've butchered bodies of people. They've beheaded bodies of people. They have no shame because they are not human beings. To comprehend what I've experienced is a very hard process. Probably will take me my entire life. I would be processing what I've experienced. I never been to such a situation, although I live in Israel and I know there are a lot of reports about happenings in Israel, but we haven't seen anything in the scale of this event before. This is something that never happened in Israel before. My hopes it would never happen in Israel again, because my faith is that we are strong. I know that India and the rest of the world is standing up with us, and we will destroy the terrorists in Gaza, which are supported by terrorists in Iran. We need peace to this Middle East. We cannot bear anymore those events. I cannot afford losing more friends. I'm already now in the situation with two young girls that my family, will have to take care for because they don't have their parents with them. We don't know what happened to their parents. Usually I'm very optimistic, but unfortunately, after seeing all the videos, I'm starting to lose hope.
Well, how will you respond to Palestinians who will say, we've also suffered over the years, a lot of Palestinian civilians have lost their lives in Israeli action. What will you say to them? Even now as we speak, Gaza has been bombed and the fear is many civilians are being killed there as well. What would you tell those who believe that they too have been victims of violence on the other side of the border?
As we live in a modern world that is mostly led by democracies, the Palestinians had many years, decades, to build something in their territory. The Gaza Strip could thrive. They could have a beautiful life over there. But none of them was making any effort to build something. Look at Israel. We are a beautiful nation. We are leading the world high-tech industry. We are leading the world in so many other areas. Show me one thing that Gaza had done for this world, for the benefit of this world. Nothing besides of destruction. Look at what they teach in the schools which are being funded by the UN.
But the people in Gaza, Amit, say that they live in an... Yeah, Amit, the people in Gaza say they live in an open prison. I believe all forms of violence that involves non-combatants should be condemned. The people of Gaza also have their own grievances, their own anxieties. Do you feel it's possible today for Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and harmony after what you and others have gone through in the last few days? Is that possible?
In the 40 years that I live, I was always a person of peace and love. I was always hugging other people. And I'm not against Islamic people. I'm not against Arabs. I have many Arab friends. I'm a tour guide. I'm collaborating with the Arab community here in Israel. But the people in Gaza identify as terrorists. They are terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and it should be deleted from this earth. There is no way for me to reach out for them anymore. I'm not willing to, because those people are growing up their kids to become terrorists. Who do you think were the terrorists that went into Israel? They grow up most likely in innocent families, but they chose this way of life. And since they are not taking down the Hamas regime as their leading entity, they are responsible to everything that happens to them today.
My final question, who do you blame? Do you just blame Hamas? Do you also feel anger and betrayed by the Netanyahu government? The fact that there was a massive security intelligence failure. How, are you someone today who feels betrayed both by your own government and angry with what Hamas did?
I have nothing to say about the Netanyahu government currently, as we are basically broken to pieces here. We are trying to build again and to form a strong power against the Hamas. I would not blame Netanyahu. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu, that I must say, but the ones to be blamed are Hamas and their founders, which is Iran. You've just reported about the other front, Hezbollah in the north. There is not much different from the funding of Hezbollah and the funding of Hamas. Although one is Sunnite, the other is Shiite, they are both receiving their funding from Iran, which is scheming against Israel. They are scheming against the Jews, and it's an anti-Semitism that we see happening again. We always say never again here in Israel.
Right. Will you ever again, Amit, go to a music festival, or has this scarred you for life?
It's hard to answer this question right now. I must tell you that the genre of the music that was played over there is inspired a lot by Indian music. It's a music genre that actually started in Goa in India, a place that I really love to visit, and I've been there many times, also with my music friends. I believe that music can encourage us, so I don't think
it's my home
stop
state.
Attending festivals.
Well, Goa is my home state, I can tell you, Amit. And on behalf of Goans, of Indians, my sympathies, thoughts and prayers. I know that people have gone through unimaginable losses and grief in the last few days. You've come on our channel and spoken about all that you've gone through. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much, Amit, and more strength to you. And I hope and pray that peace returns on both sides of the border sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much. Dandevat.
And a short while ago, my colleague Rahul Kaval spoke exclusively to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert. He asked, Mr. Olmert claims that Israel had the intelligence but failed to read it correctly because of their own arrogance. Listen in.
Mr. Olmert, given the fearsome capabilities of the Shin Bet, the domestic intelligence agency, the Mossad, the external intelligence agency of Israel, where do you think the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went wrong in not being able to join the dots? A lot of the training seemed to be happening in daylight, quite clearly visible to CCTV cameras. I'm sure to your ground human intelligence assets, to technical surveillance assets. How did the world's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus, in your view, miss all these signs?
Question about the failure, or the appearance of failure, of one of the most sophisticated intelligence systems there are, which is the Israeli system. Israeli military intelligence, Israeli secret service, which are known to be really one of the best in the world. The truth is that we knew all the details. We saw everything. We saw all the preparations. Nothing was hidden from our eyes and the eyes of the very sophisticated cyber system that we have developed in Israel. We just were arrogant to believe that they can do it. So we saw all the preparations, and yet we said, they are not going to do it. I mean, this is just practice, this is just fooling out. They are not being able to accomplish what we see that they are training to do. And therefore, even in the last couple of days before the operation, we pulled down a military division from Gaza, from the nearby Gaza and moved it into another area. And we have actually emptied all of the area from a major, robust military presence, which was based not on not knowing all the details of all kinds of preparations, but of the arrogance that we believe that no one will dare do what they seem to have prepared to do. But they did it, and we were caught in surprise.
Okay, we've heard the Israeli position. Let's take a look at the Palestinian position, because remember, what we are seeing in the last 24 hours is Israeli retaliation in Gaza. Mustafa Barghouti, member of the Palestinian National Council, General Secretary, Palestinian National Initiative, now joins us from Ramallah. Appreciate your joining us, sir. This massive counterattack that Israel has launched in Hamas, how do you see the situation now in Gaza at the moment? Do you see this as some Gazans are calling it war crimes?
The situation in Gaza is very drastic. It's a situation of total humanitarian crisis because Israel blocked all the roads to Gaza, blocked all the passages. They declared that they are going to prevent the supply of food, water, electricity, and medicine to the population of Gaza. Israel is taking 2.2 million people as hostages. These are civilians that have no access to basic life support. And Israel also declared that they will bombard any convoy that tries to bring food or medicine to the people in Gaza from Egypt. This is a very dangerous situation, but it is also combined with the Israeli airstrikes on the people of Gaza, which is very dangerous and very heavy and unprecedented. Around the clock, they are bombarding Gaza. Thousands and thousands of houses have been demolished and destroyed. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by these airstrikes, and including 260 children who were slaughtered, as well as more than 170 women. The attacks continue on Gaza, and the destruction is terrible. People say that they have no safe space to go to. And in addition to the fact that almost already seven journalists have been killed, many with their families. We have whole families completely erased. And Israel now is using prohibited weapons like white phosphorus, which is forbidden, and it is causing terrible wounds, in addition, of course, to the other atrocity. What worries us most, and this is my third point, is that Israel is declaring that they want to evict the people in Gaza to Egypt. That means they want to ethnically cleanse 2.2 million people. That is totally unacceptable. What Israel is doing there, encouraged by many Western governments, is practically violating not only international law, but also committing very serious crimes against the people of Gaza.
But what are the options then for Palestinians, especially in Gaza? There are reports now the US is working on a human corridor to allow civilians to leave Gaza. Do you think countries like Qatar, for example, can mediate to try in some way de-escalate? Do you think any of this can help now, or is it too late?
I don't. It would be horrible if the Americans want to establish a corridor to force people out of Gaza. This means that the United States is participating in an act of ethnic cleansing. We don't want people to leave Gaza. We want food to come to Gaza. We want medication to come to Gaza. We want water supply to come to Gaza, but not to enforce an act of ethnic cleansing on the population of Gaza. Egypt and Qatar can do mediation if Israel is ready to respond. Already there is a proposal for a complete ceasefire immediately, for de-escalation, and for immediate exchange of prisoners, so that Israeli citizens who are prisoners in Gaza now can come back to Israel in exchange of prisoners, and where Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails will be released as well, including some who have been in Israeli jail for 44 years.
India has condemned the terror attacks on Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi spoke yesterday, sir. India, the one country which has been receptive also to the Palestinian cause over the decades. How do you see India's reaction? And do you have a message in a way for India at this crucial, critical time?
Absolutely. I have a big message to Mr. Modi. You cannot condemn Palestinians and not criticize the Israeli occupation. You cannot take one side, which is the Israeli side. You should respect, I hope he will respect the traditions of the Indian people, the tradition of Mahatma Gandhi, who wrote before anybody else about the injustice of creating a colonial system, a colonial settler system in Palestine at the expense of the Palestinian people. He should respect the memory of Mahatma Gandhi, the memory of Nehru and many other leaders, regardless of whether he belonged to their party or not. But to take a stand with Israel at this time against people who struggle for their freedom, I don't think this is something that Indian people would accept. And I don't think that this is something that goes well with the traditions of Indian people and their honorable struggle to get freedom.
But what also doesn't go well, Mr. Barghouti, is that India itself has been a victim of terror, and the world today must have zero tolerance for terrorism. There is no way you and others then can condone the barbaric attack on civilians by Hamas. You can't expect India or any civilized country to ignore terror attacks that are carried out on infants, on innocent non-combatants.
Look, I am against killing any civilian. I am against attacks on civilians, whether Palestinian and Israeli. But you cannot only condemn Palestinians and call them terrorists and at the same time not condemn the Israeli settler terrorists who are attacking Palestinians at this moment while we speak in the West Bank, not in Gaza. Already 25 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli settlers and Israeli army during the last 3 days in the West Bank. Before the things erupted in Gaza, 248 Palestinians were killed in West Bank by Israeli settlers and Israeli army, including 40 children. Nobody apologized about that. So taking a stand to dehumanize Palestinians as Americans are doing and as Israelis are doing is unacceptable. And it does not fit well. We are against terror anywhere. But Palestinian struggle for freedom is not terror.
You know, the fact is violence, begetting more violence is dangerous. So what is the way forward? If we accept that there is no space for violence, what is the way forward, Mr. Barghouti, according to you now?
The way forward is one of two possibilities. One possibility that I support totally, and I think most Palestinians do, is to immediately end this fight, immediately have ceasefire, start a process of de-escalation, initiate an exchange of prisoners so those Israelis who are imprisoned now can come home safe and Palestinian prisoners can be released. And then initiate a true peace process that leads to ending occupation and ending all these conflicts. Israel has conducted already 5 wars on Gaza. This is the 6th one, during which time Israel killed 5,000 Palestinians. They say now that 1,000 Israelis were killed or 1,200, and this is like 9/11 in the States. What about the 5,000 Palestinians? I don't think anybody should die. But the way out of this is to accept Palestinians as equal human beings and stop dehumanizing all Palestinians and stop killing all Palestinians, claiming that this is an attack only on Hamas.
Let me leave it there, Mr. Barghouti. You've given us your perspective, and I appreciate you joining us there from Ramallah. Let's hope that peace returns sooner rather than later. The fact, though, is that the Israel-Hamas war has now entered its 5th day, and the war has left thousands dead. And as we've been showing those images, the Gaza Strip now is totally devastated. The Israeli military is also scrambling on 2 fronts apart from Hamas. Israel has also had exchanges of fire with Hezbollah. The world increasingly divided. Western nations standing with Israel, and most of the Arab world is fully supporting the Palestinian cause, with Iran seen to be a lead player in supporting Hamas. At this moment, I'm joined by a very special guest. Professor Bernard Heikel from the University of Princeton in the United States is in Riyadh at the moment. He's one of the world's leading authorities on the West Asian region. Appreciate your joining us, Professor Heikel. How do you see the events playing out now? Do you see this as brewing into an unprecedented conflict that could get bloodier and longer now?
So first, hello, and thank you for having me. I don't think it's unprecedented. I mean, there's been several, wars between Hamas and Israel over, more than a decade. But the intensity and the ferocity of the attack is certainly unprecedented. The entry of Hamas into Israel proper and the killing of over 1,000 Israelis and the brutal murder of over 1,000 Israelis and and there are several thousand also injured. That's unprecedented. The complete breakdown in Israeli intelligence and military capability in blocking this invasion across the border is also unprecedented. And now what we're seeing is an Israeli reaction to this attack. And they're basically, from the latest news reports, they're flattening Gaza. Many tens of thousands of people will die as a result of this. And it seems also that the Israelis don't care about the hostages, which is something they used to care about a lot before. At the moment, they've given up, I think, on the hostages, and they just want to destroy Hamas. In the process, of course, many, many thousands of Palestinians will suffer and die, just like many thousands of Israelis have already.
But do you see, Professor Heikel, Hamas being destroyed? Just as Hamas's aim to destroy the Israeli state has never worked, do you think Israel now will retaliate in a manner that Hamas is finished?
Well, if the Israelis reoccupy Gaza, which they left in 2005, if they reoccupy that strip of land, then yes, Hamas will be destroyed, and they will be, any survivors will live in exile, as some of them do now in Turkey and in Qatar. But essentially, it depends on how far the Israelis want to take the invasion and whether they want to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, which, as I said, they left in 2005.
But do you see Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu being pushed now into a position where he has no option but to strike and strike hard, because what has happened in Israel has actually weakened his political authority? He's facing a lot of criticism for the security intelligence failures. Will Netanyahu now, has he been left with no option but to go in for a ground military offensive in Gaza?
Well, I definitely think that this attack by Hamas on Israel spells the end of Prime Minister Netanyahu's political career. I can't see him surviving the consequences of this attack. But for now, Israel is at war. And as long as it is at war, he is the leader of the country. And he will try to also aim to resuscitate his reputation by destroying Gaza and Hamas. So I think we're in completely uncharted territories. I think the gloves are off. I think the Israelis now are in a completely different mental state of mind because of the size of this disaster that they've faced. This failure and defeat. I mean, Israel has been defeated by a ragtag army of men with pickup trucks and guns and grenades. And so they have to reestablish deterrence. And to do that, they will need to be extremely violent. I personally think that's, in the long term, a mistake. I think that, the Palestinian question will never be resolved until the Palestinians have a state. But that's far from being on the agenda of the Israeli political leadership at the moment.
I saw an interesting article you wrote, Professor Heikel, 2 days ago. You said this was Hamas's way of establishing their superiority in the Palestinian region over moderate Palestinian national authorities, both in Gaza and particularly also now possibly in the future in West Bank. Do you think that will happen, that Hamas, at least on the Arab street or among the ordinary Palestinian, will be seen as heroes for taking on Israel in this manner, even as the Western world sees them as rank terrorists?
No. Absolutely. I mean, Hamas is. I mean, I'm speaking to you from Saudi Arabia, from Riyadh, and I follow, Arabs all over the Middle East, and everyone sees Hamas as heroes, or most people. I wouldn't say everyone, but many people see them as heroes for what they have done. And if they survive this onslaught by Israel, they will definitely have taken over the leadership of the Palestinian cause, and not least because also the Palestinian Authority, which is the authority that is officially recognized as the head of the Palestinians, is completely corrupt and inefficient and governs very badly and has lost most of its legitimacy in the eyes of Palestinians. By the way, there's one other aspect to why this happened. It's not just Hamas trying to take over the Palestinian cause and the leadership of the Palestinian cause. I think also Iran is very much involved in this attack, and Iran wanted to do two things. First, it wanted to have a big say in the question of Palestine in order to salvage some of its reputation for having been involved in the massacres of hundreds of thousands of Syrians during the Syrian civil war, most of whom were Sunni Muslims. And the second thing that Iran wanted to accomplish was to end the process of normalization and peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That also now has been put on hold effectively because of this war.
That is what I wanted to come to. You are in Riyadh at the moment in Saudi Arabia, and there is seen to be a kind of brewing war, ideological war, political war between the moderate Gulf states and Iran. Do you see that battle intensifying within the Islamic world, or will there now be a greater consolidation, a sense of unity with Israel being seen as the common enemy?
No, there are two kind of visions for the Middle East, or for what you call West Asia. One vision is that of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and that is a vision about progress and prosperity and economic development and peace, but with also caring about Palestinian rights. That's one vision, and then there's another vision which is led by Iran, and that's a vision of chaos and instability with the aim of destroying Israel and expelling the United States from West Asia. And that's never going to happen. I mean, Israel will never be destroyed, nor will America leave West Asia because of Iran. So what we see are two competing visions, one that thrives on instability, and the other one that thrives and wants stability. And that will continue, and what we're seeing in Israel is part of that process.
So do you see, therefore, this war possibly widening across West Asia? There is talk of Hezbollah now. There are reports of Hezbollah firing rockets from Lebanon, a possibility of a new front there being opened. Would this war, therefore, widen in its ambit, or will it be primarily limited to Gaza and possibly in the future to the West Bank?
No, I think it could definitely widen to include Lebanon. That's a decision that Iran will take, because Hezbollah is basically a militia that works for Iran and is part of the Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran. So if the Iranians give the order for Hezbollah to enter the war, they will. And Hezbollah has over 150,000 rockets with precision-guided rockets. So if they launch an attack on Israel, they could really devastate Israel. But the retaliation from Israel could be awesome. I mean, Israel would destroy Lebanon, and also it might bring Iran into the war. The U.S., as you probably heard, the U.S. has sent several battleships, including an aircraft carrier, to the Eastern Mediterranean. They're about to arrive in Israel, actually, any hour now. And that is a signal to Iran that, it should not escalate. Because should it choose to escalate, the Israelis and the Americans are effectively saying to Iran that you will be a target as well. So this could actually spiral out of control, for sure.
But you see, that is the worry, isn't it? Because there's already an ongoing war in the heart of Europe, in Ukraine. There is a feeling that the Americans could, for at least now, turn their eyes off the ball in Ukraine, focus on Israel. Do you see that happening? Russia possibly playing a role. They've come out with a statement in a way, some see it as supporting Palestine, China playing a role. Are we seeing a wider power game out here, or will it be confined to Israel versus Hamas?
Yeah, I mean, I think what will probably happen will be we will see several weeks, maybe months of Israel destroying basically all of Gaza. and the Americans trying to contain. I don't think this can spread to involve Russia or China. The specific issue with Ukraine is the following: it has to do with arms and weapons shipments. Essentially, America is depleted. All its production has been going to the Ukraine, and if the Israelis now want also more weapons from the United States, America will have to choose between Ukraine and Israel, and so the real implication is whether they have sufficient weaponry for waging these battles or these wars in two different theaters of operation. I don't think, though, the Americans will get involved directly in the Israeli-Palestinian dispute, because Israel doesn't need America's help. Military help. It needs military equipment and weapons, but not American soldiers. And then if it widens more broadly to Lebanon, Israel can handle that as well. If it includes Iran, though, that's a whole other story. Then America would probably become involved.
But where does all this leave the core Palestinian cause? Do you believe that's completely now pushed into the distance? Any hope of a peaceful resolution and a two-state solution?
I think it has been pushed further back into the distance, unfortunately. I don't know how Hamas thought that they could, gain anything from this attack. So I don't see the Palestinian issue, unfortunately, being resolved at all, unless something dramatically changes in Israel, because you have to get the Israelis to agree. And at the moment, the Israelis are even more far to the right than they are to the center as a result of these attacks.
Can I therefore ask you in conclusion, an Indian perspective, in your view, how should India see what's playing out in West Asia? India has, of course, interests in terms of oil prices, and the concerns that we will have of a permanently destabilized region doesn't help us. Should India be seen, according to you, to take firm sides in this battle taking place between Israel and Hamas?
I mean, look, it depends on how devastating the images are of the destruction of Gaza. So, if you have tens or hundreds of thousands of dead people, it's going to become very difficult, not just for India, but for all countries around the world, to have to decide whether they should condemn Israel for its action or overreaction, let's say. I think oil is only an issue if Iran is directly involved in the attack in some way or in the war. But Saudi Arabia has lots of spare capacity. It can produce a lot of oil to make up for any loss of Iranian oil, for example. So I think India, at the moment, as far as I understand, the Prime Minister of India has shown great support for Israel because of the tragic and horrific events there. And I think India's interests are principally with Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the Gulf states, not so much with the axis of resistance and instability that is with Iran and in Syria and Yemen. So I think India's okay. India will be able to stay on the side of the Saudis, and I don't think you'll be affected by this.
Net, in an area that you've written about, covered extensively, do you see this now to be a tipping point for another spell of destabilization, of explosions from time to time? And will Palestine remain fundamental in a way to this part of the world?
Yes, I think that as long as the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not resolved, you will have repeated episodes of instability and war and violence. I also think that Iran is a major source of instability in the region. It has all these non-state actors, these militias in Yemen and Lebanon, now in Palestine, as well as in Iraq, and it uses them to destabilize these societies. So I think that both the Iranian regime and the lack of resolution of the Palestinian conflict are both sources of deep instability in this region.
Professor Heikel, for joining me there from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and giving us a sense of the bigger picture on what lies ahead. I appreciate you joining us there. We've tried to cover every dimension, as you've seen, on the show tonight, and we will continue to strive to do that, not just with this story, but every story that we do. Up next, something happier. Rohit Sharma breaks Sachin Tendulkar's record for the most number of World Cup centuries. That's on the other side. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
Let's turn to another of our top headlines tonight. A big abortion debate reigniting once again in the courts. Just one day after allowing the termination of a 26-week pregnancy, a Supreme Court bench halted the abortion today after an AIMS report suggested the child may have been born alive and an abortion would require feticide. Take a look. Shrishti Ojha tells you more.
The Supreme Court of India today had a split opinion on the issue of termination of a 26-week-old pregnancy. Two female judges of the top court of the country differed in their opinions with regard to whether the petitioner, a 27-year-old woman, should be allowed to terminate her pregnancy. This was after the Supreme Court itself earlier this week allowed such termination, saying that the court acknowledges the bodily autonomy of the petitioner, who had explained that she was nowhere in a condition physically, mentally or financially to raise a third child. However, a day after the order, the centre approached Supreme Court yesterday, informing the court that the Medical Board of AIMS in a new email has said that termination of the pregnancy can only happen if it's preceded by feticide because the fetus is viable. The case was mentioned before the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, yesterday, who, while deferring the termination for the time being, asked the centre to file a recall application of the earlier order. The case was heard in detail today by a bench of Justice Hema Kohli and Justice B.V. Nagaratna. The petitioner woman, who was herself present in the court, informed the court that she still wishes to terminate the pregnancy and she is not in a condition to take care of the child. Considering everything, while Justice Hema Kohli said that her judicial conscience will not allow her to permit such termination, Justice B.V. Nagaratna was of the opinion that the lady's choice should be respected. Since there was a difference in opinion between the two judges, the case will now be placed before the Chief Justice of India for constitution of a larger bench. In a situation like this, when time is of the essence and every day counts, it will be important to see how swift an action will the Supreme Court of India take and whether or not it will allow the woman's request to terminate her pregnancy. With camera person Ashwini from New Delhi, this is Shrishti Ojha, India Today.
Interesting case there. Okay, let me leave you with our image of the day, and it's our good news story as well, because India has defeated Afghanistan pretty convincingly in the second World Cup match in the national capital. Leading from the front, captain Rohit Sharma scored a magnificent century and broke a world record in the process. He has broken Sachin Tendulkar's record for the most number of centuries at World Cup, 7 and counting. Chase master Virat Kohli too scored his second 50 in this World Cup. With this win, India now set to meet arch rivals Pakistan on 14th October, full of confidence. That's a match the world will be looking at closely. For now, you stay well, stay safe. Our thoughts and our prayers for Team India. Bye for now. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Colors by Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. By Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
By Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant. By Cola makes you wish everything was as vibrant.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Extra taste from Indian Oil. सेलो रिश्ता जिंदगी भर का.
Big Israel-Hamas escalation looms. Will Gaza be invaded next? India's top conflict reporters on ground zero.
अभी यहाँ पर हमास के रॉकेट्स अभी ऊपर आ रहे हैं और आयरन डोम सिस्टम यहाँ पर आ रहा है। अभी हम लोग बिल्कुल भागने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। एक मिनट।
As Hamas rains hellfire on Israel,
thick plumes of smoke rising over the horizon. That is Gaza being bombed by the Israeli forces.
shattering view of the war zone.
पूरा घर दहल रहा है, धमाकों से सायरन बजा और महज 20 सेकंड के भीतर से जो रॉकेट है वो दागे गए हैं।
From Israel to Lebanon.
The whole patch of Gaza Strip is on one side with the sea. From the land also now the Israel has enhanced the security of the sea so that the Hamas and the Hezbollah fighters could not penetrate.
The most exhaustive coverage of Israel-Hamas war.
Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. I'm Gaurav Sawant. The situation in Israel extremely tense at this time. Hamas terrorists tried to target the Ben Gurion Airport and flights to this area, to this airport have been disrupted. Several flights have been cancelled, several delayed, and Israel that promises to fight back is facing an uphill task. Over the course of the next half hour, we get you details. I was reporting from Sidrot in the southern part of Israel. That's the southern tip of Israel. Some Hamas terrorists have been spotted around that area. Some Hamas terrorists have been spotted around Escalation. India Today's Ashutosh Mishra and I report from Israel, and Ashraf Vani gets you the latest reports from Lebanon. Take a look at these special reports. और ये तस्वीरें देखिए, ये सिडरोट शहर की तस्वीरें हैं। बिल्कुल सुनसान पड़ा है ये सिडरोट शहर और एक व्यक्ति आपको कहीं नहीं दिख रहा है, ना किसी घर में, ना सड़कों पर, और यहाँ तनाव बहुत ज़्यादा लगातार बढ़ता जा रहा है, लेकिन खतरा अभी भी बरकरार है। ये पुलिस की टीमें और कंस्ट्रक्शन की टीमें यहाँ पर इलाकों को खाली करा रही हैं। वो आप देख भी सकते हैं कि सेना की टुकड़ियाँ घर खाली करा रही हैं और अभी यहाँ पर हमास के रॉकेट्स अभी ऊपर आ रहे हैं और आयरन डोम सिस्टम यहाँ पर आ रहा है। अभी हम लोग बिल्कुल भागने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। एक मिनट, वी आर ट्राइंग टू रन टू अ शेल्टर। आई हैव टू गेट एक यहाँ पर हमास के रॉकेट यहाँ पर आ रहे हैं। डोम सिस्टम यहाँ एक्टिवेट हो रहा है और हम बिल्कुल जल्दी से यहाँ पर बॉम्ब शेल्टर के अंदर, यहाँ पर इस समय स्थिति है कि हम बॉम्ब शेल्टर के अंदर है और ये दरवाजा बंद करने की जरूरत है, लेकिन सिचुएशन यहाँ पर ये है। Iron Dome, that boom boom.
Yeah, this boom. This area protection from the boom come from Gaza boom, you know.
Gaza.
Israel has something in them. I don't know English. I will say, but Kipat Barzel. If the bomb from Gaza come like here, Israel make something. It come from here, and the iron make boom, you know.
तो आयरन डोम सिस्टम जो है इजराइल का, वो अब इन रॉकेट्स को ध्वस्त करेगा। लेकिन आप ये सोचिए कि अभी भी सिडरोट में आज तक की टीम मौजूद है और अभी भी हमास उस स्थिति में है कि वो सिडरोट को, एश्कलोन को, इन सभी इलाकों को निशाना बना सकता है। गौरव सावंत, सिडरोट, दक्षिणी इजराइल।
You can hear the siren played out again in Escalation. This is fifth attack since morning, and the moment siren heard, the first protocol is to evacuate. All of a sudden, loud noise, loud explosions heard here in Escalation again. You heard the siren sound, and immediately the first protocol is to vacate the room. Massive attack here by the terror group, the Hamas, which is constantly attacking the Israeli territory. And these people, if you see right behind me, who were in different rooms, all of a sudden, the moment they heard a siren, they entered in a room. Hear the sound. There's a loud sound. So this is a fifth attack since morning. Hamas constantly targeting these areas, and this is how we have to survive. Like these rooms, these are 30 iron metallic, and it is a mandatory to made in every building. And there's only a protocol. The moment you hear a siren, go to the safer places, either in the staircases or rush to the safe house. fifth attack since morning. Escalation looks like Hamas is also aggressively escalating its offenses against Israel in the Israeli territory, targeting the civilians. Is gonna be a terrible. In the past 24 hours, this has been happening here, and it looks like situation is escalating between Hamas and Israel. With this ground report, is southern Israel's Escalation. This is Ashutosh Mishra for India Today. फिर जैसे ही सायरन बजा है अलार्म से और हम भाग करके बंकर में आए हैं। दरअसल हर घर में इस तरह 30 mm की दीवारों का एक बंकर बना हुआ है। ये परिवार हमारे साथ था बाहर, इन्हीं के घर में मैं बालकनी देखिए पूरा घर दहल रहा है धमाकों से। सायरन बजा और महज 20 सेकंड के भीतर से जो रॉकेट है वो दागे गए हैं और इस समय आयरन डोम आवाज दे रहा, पूरा घर हिल रहा। हम इस समय एक बंकर में, घर के अंदर सेफ हाउस बनाना जरूरी होता है। परिवार की तरफ से ये महिला दरवाजे के पास थी और बाकी के सदस्य उनको खींच करके बाहर ले आए। ये बहुत तेजी से आवाज आ रही है। अचानक एस्केलॉन में एक बार फिर अटैक हुआ। ये दूसरा सायरन था और उसके तुरंत बाद भारी भरकम रॉकेट दागे गए हैं एस्केलॉन में। इस घर के सेफ हाउस से मैं आशुतोष मिश्रा, आज तक।
I was reporting from the Zikim area, very close to the southern Israeli border earlier today, and the Israeli tanks and armored personnel carriers are there in larger numbers. Israel is now preparing to mount a bigger offensive. Air attacks are happening, but by all accounts, it's only a matter of time before ground forces also go into Gaza to completely decimate the threat posed by Hamas, which incidentally, even as of now, remains quite intense. Hamas, despite the bombing, retains the capacity to strike back. In fact, there were some reports that seem to indicate that Hamas terrorists, despite massive presence of Israeli soldiers on ground, have been trying to infiltrate, this time using the sea route closer to Escalate. The Hezbollah have been trying to use the route again to infiltrate from the north. For Israel, this seems to be a war that's coming to them from two different sides, both from the north and from the south. We bring you a ground report as both Israel and the Gaza-held territory, the Palestinians there count their losses.
Blocks after blocks smashed to rubble. Neighborhoods in the sealed off Gaza pounded by unrelenting Israeli airstrikes.
The style of attack is barbaric. I mean, the visuals are ISO visuals. In a way, this is our 9/11, and we're standing strong. We're standing strong. We will overcome this.
Nearly 1,000 people have died in Gaza and 1,200 in Israel since Hamas launched a surprise attack on Saturday, triggering a war with Israel. Home to some 2 million people in an area of 140 square miles, more than half of them living in poverty. The tiny Gaza Strip has plunged into a humanitarian crisis, with food, fuel, electricity and water supplies cut off amidst the Israeli siege. Ordinary Palestinians crowded into UN schools and a shrinking number of safe neighborhoods. Meanwhile, sporadic fire by Hamas continued to pound southern Israeli territory. On Tuesday afternoon, barrages of rockets pounded Ashkelon and Tel Aviv. There were no immediate reports of casualties.
ये जो आप सामने टुकड़ा रखे हैं, ये है वो रॉकेट जो दरअसल आया हमास की ओर से। इसकी लंबाई देखिए, यही वो रॉकेट है लगभग 1.5 फुट लंबा, जिसका अब ये खाली शेल है, लेकिन ये खाली शेल भी मैं उठा नहीं सकता। और ये रॉकेट जब घर में गिरा, इसने इस तरह की तबाही मचा। आप समझिए कि किस तरह की क्षमता हमास की है कि जो इतने बड़े बड़े रॉकेट वो इस्तेमाल कर रहा है और इससे नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है। और ये देखिए नुकसान भी कैसा है, उसकी क्षमता देखिए कि ये पूरी जो दीवार है 1.5 फीट चौड़ी, इस पूरी दीवार को उसने भेद दिया था पूरे घर को। और ये देखिए ऊपर तक नुकसान, ऊपर 3 से 4 मंजिला तक नुकसान हुआ है लोगों का।
With heavy mobilization along the Gaza Strip, Israel appears increasingly likely to launch a ground offensive into the 40-kilometer-long swath wedged among Israel, Egypt, and the Mediterranean.
आप ये सोच नजर दौड़ाइए, पुलिस की एक गाड़ी यहाँ, पुलिस की एक गाड़ी यहाँ पर और सेना की गाड़ियाँ यहाँ पर। पूरा प्रयास यही है कि जल्द से जल्द अब यहाँ पर अगर हमास के आतंकवादी किसी पॉकेट में छिपे हैं, किसी बिल्डिंग में छिपे हैं, किसी नुक्कड़ पे, किसी छत पर, घर की छत पर या फिर किसी कमरे में, तो एक एक कमरे को खाली कराया जा रहा है। ये वो इलाका है जहाँ सबसे ज़्यादा असर था हमास के आतंकवादियों का दक्षिणी इजराइल में। घरों में घुसकर यहाँ लोगों को मौत के घाट उतारा था।
The United States expressed complete solidarity with Israel and warned Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group against supporting Hamas.
Let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening.
A momentous challenge ahead for Israel to rescue dozens of civilians and Israeli soldiers held hostage by Hamas militants safely from the narrow, densely populated Gaza Strip. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra from southern Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
There is one report that's coming out of Kafar Azar. This is one of the smaller settlements, a kibbutz right at the border, very close to the Gaza Strip, where the Hamas terrorists are believed to have butchered, massacred little children. Israeli forces that went and recovered their territory, they found little children, according to Israeli media reports, with their heads completely chopped off. This story has stunned not just the people of that locality, not just Israel, but people across the world. This is where Israel says enough is enough. 1,200 people have been killed in Israel. More than 2,000 people have been injured in Israel. But this entire country is coming together. In fact, some of the flights that were coming in to Israel had overseas Israelis coming home to fight for justice and to fight to decimate the Hamas.
Unspeakable horrors of the Hamas terror attacks on Israel. Reports suggest Hamas terrorists brutally slaughtered, beheaded 40 babies in a kibbutz, Kfar Aza, near the Gaza Strip in the most monstrous way. This is what an Israeli general has claimed. Cribs overturned, strollers left behind. Barbaric enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The entire world has reeled in horror.
It's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities. Babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down. Families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. Many of them reserves who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well.
The Israeli government has sent out a big warning to the Hamas terrorists for allegedly killing innocent babies.
We had hundreds massacred, families wiped out in their beds and their homes, women brutally raped and murdered, over 100 kidnapped, including children. It's only gotten worse. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
Those who behead children, burn women and kill Holocaust survivors will be deleted. The clear message and full support I conveyed today to our dear fighters at the Gaza border.
Some soldiers say they found babies with their heads cut off and entire families gunned down in their beds.
We walk door after door. We kill a lot of the terrorists. We are stronger than them. They are aggressive. They are very bad. They cut head of children, cut head of women, but we are stronger than them.
The Israeli Defense Forces were removing the bodies of victims found in the area when they found the children's mutilated remains. According to reports, Hamas terrorists unleashed barbarism while the babies were sleeping with their parents. dragged them into the streets, beheading most of them and shooting the remaining dead, is what the Israeli government claims.
Think it's not a war. It's not a battlefield. You see the babies, the mother, the fathers in the bedrooms, in the protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war. It's not a battlefield. It's a massacre. It's a terror activity. So you can look it on yourself. It's something that I never saw in my life.
Another horrific image from the kibbutz Reim shows the terrorists forcing their entry and lying in ambush. One of the terrorists is seen attacking a passenger car which arrives unsuspecting at the gate, opening fire from point-blank range and gunning down all occupants of the vehicle. More than 700 Israelis were killed in one day in the kibbutz near the Gaza border. The largest terror attack in a single day in the country's history, where 1,200 Israelis have died. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra across Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
Israeli forces have one man on their crosshairs, and his name is Muhammad Deif. He is the military commander of this terrorist outfit known as the Hamas, and Israel wants to take him out. There have been several intelligence-based precision strikes on bases that have been considered as strongholds of the Hamas military leadership. In fact, Hamas strategic strongholds have been eliminated by Israeli precision strikes. However, one terrorist continues to evade the Israeli forces, and that is Muhammad Deif. Several members of his family have been killed in the precision strikes, but Israel is very clear. Their motive is to ensure not just the Hamas military leadership, their leader Muhammad Deif, and their capability to target Israel ever again is completely decimated in the days and weeks ahead. We bring you this report.
Israel's biggest ever offensive against Hamas terrorists. After the bloodiest terror attacks on its soil, Israel is baying for revenge. With never before seen scale of attacks inside Gaza. And this man, Muhammad Deif, is one of the prime targets in the Israeli terror hunt. Deif, notoriously called the Guest, is believed to be the mastermind of the coordinated terror attacks. And also head of the infamous Al-Qassam rocket brigade. On Wednesday, Israel jets bombed the Hamas military chief's home in Gaza, killing several of his family members, including his brother. But there's no news on Deif, the shadowy figure and most wanted man now in Israel. Sources say it was in May 2021, after an Israeli raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque, that Deif began planning the terror strike. Committed to an armed resistance against Israel, Deif has quickly risen to prominence within Hamas's military unit, the Al-Qassam brigades. Deif has survived at least 4 Israeli assassination attempts, while losing an eye and multiple limbs. Can Israel smoke Deif out, or will he survive to plot another blow for Israel? Bureau Report, India Today.
Even though Israel has been bombing Hamas bases, they've bombed the house of Muhammad Deif, the head of Hamas. They've bombed various other vital assets and vital points of the Hamas military leadership. Hamas retains the capability to strike. Even today, there were a series of rocket attacks that took place, and not restricted just to Esdrot, where I was, or Escalation, where Ashutosh Mishra has been reporting from, but several parts of southern Israel have been in the line of Hamas fire. Even this Ben Gurion airport behind me has been targeted by the terrorists. The added threat is from the north, where Hezbollah has been targeting various camps very close to the border. We bring you this report.
Israeli shelling along the border with Lebanon. A potential expansion of the conflict between Israel and Hamas to the Israeli-Lebanese border further north. Israeli tanks deployed to the Lebanon border. This after Lebanon's heavily armed Hezbollah group, designated a terrorist organization by the US, targeted Israeli positions on a disputed location on Sunday. Israel responded with a barrage of shelling. At least 3 Hezbollah militants were killed on Monday.
India Today is the only team which is reporting from the border, which is the center of tension between Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas and Israel. In fact, on Monday, the top army commander of the Israeli army was killed, which is confirmed by Israeli forces now, was killed behind me on this border, because the fighters of Hezbollah and Hamas penetrated from the Lebanon towards the Israel also. Not only they infiltrated from Gaza to Israel, but also infiltrated from Lebanon to the Israeli territory and occupied some of the army checkpoints there.
Backed by Iran, the Shiite Hezbollah group has risen from a shadowy faction established during Lebanon's 1975 to 1990 civil war, with significant influence over the Lebanese state. Hezbollah and Israel engaged in a brutal month-long war in 2006. Iran's Revolutionary Guards founded Hezbollah in 1982 to combat Israeli forces that had invaded Lebanon. The group espouses Shiite Islamist ideology. Active politically in Lebanon, Hezbollah boasts precision rockets and 100,000 fighters. The group demonstrated its military advances in 2006 during a 5-week war with Israel.
Whenever the rockets are being fired by Hezbollah towards the Israeli positions on those mountain tops which are behind me, because it is the border which here in the Lebanon is called as the Palestinian territory, but Israel occupied it physically and have the checkpoints on all these mountains behind me, and they are being targeted now by the Hezbollah by rockets here from Lebanon.
Bringing you comprehensive coverage of the Middle East's worst conflict in decades, with boots on the ground. With Ashraf Wani, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra, Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today's Ashraf Wani in Lebanon, Ashutosh Mishra in Escalate, and I, Gaurav Sawant, will continue to report from different parts of Israel. We've been in Sderot, we've been in Escalate. I'm reporting from the Ben Gurion airport here in Tel Aviv, where tension continues to mount. There are massive crowds because several flights have been delayed and cancelled. We will continue to get to the latest updates, but that is all I have for you on this special broadcast from Israel. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest. Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Israeli shelling along the border with Lebanon. A potential expansion of the conflict between Israel and Hamas to the Israeli-Lebanese border further north. Israeli tanks deployed to the Lebanon border. This after Lebanon's heavily armed Hezbollah group, designated a terrorist organization by the US, targeted Israeli positions on a disputed location on Sunday. Israel responded with a barrage of shelling. At least 3 Hezbollah militants were killed on Monday. Backed by Iran, the Shiite Hezbollah group has risen from a shadowy faction established during Lebanon's 1975 to 1990 civil war, with significant influence over the Lebanese state. Hezbollah and Israel engaged in a brutal month-long war in 2006. Iran's Revolutionary Guards founded Hezbollah in 1982 to combat Israeli forces that had invaded Lebanon. The group espouses Shiite Islamist ideology. Active politically in Lebanon, Hezbollah boasts precision rockets and 100,000 fighters. The group demonstrated its military advances in 2006 during a 5-week war with Israel.
Whenever the rockets are being fired by Hezbollah towards the Israeli positions on those mountain tops which are behind me, because it is the border which here in the Lebanon is called as the Palestinian territory, but Israel occupied it physically and have the checkpoints on all these mountains behind me, and they are being targeted now by the Hezbollah by rockets here from Lebanon.
Bringing you comprehensive coverage of the Middle East's worst conflict in decades, with boots on the ground. With Ashraf Ani, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra, Bureau Report, India Today.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Co-powered by आपके भरोसे के लिए मैक्स लाइफ इंश्योरेंस.
All it takes is one day, क्योंकि ये ICC Men's Cricket World Cup
Sachin Tendulkar 6. He's got 7 now. And he just played 3 World Cups, Rohit Sharma. What an innings.
Well, the Jashan has well and truly begun for the Indian cricket team. 2 matches, 2 wins, and both wins rather convincingly. Today, the Indian team went up 1 notch in terms of their performance, absolutely dominating Afghanistan in their second game. 273 was the total that Afghanistan had set in front of the Indian team. Many thought it could be tricky, but in the end, the Indian team won on a canter, because not only did they have 8 wickets in hand, they reached their target with 15 overs to spare. What that has done to the points table is really propelled India to the number 2 spot and sets them up very nicely for that big game that is going to be coming up on the 14th. The game that all of us have our eyes on, India versus Pakistan. So Pakistan have played 2 games, won those 2. India have played 2 games and have won 2. So it sets up that particular clash very nicely. We'll be joined by the 2007 T20 World Cup winner, Robin Uthappa, a little later in our program. He's going to analyze this particular game, a game which saw plenty of record stumbling, courtesy Rohit Sharma. Let's show you the highlights of how first Afghanistan, having won the toss, decided to bat first. Their batting went by, and then from there on, how the Indian team chased it down in just 35 overs.
More pace in the surface.
In bright and sunny conditions at the Arun Jaitley Stadium,
Good move.
the Afghanistan innings began with a few boundaries.
Squarer this time.
Jasprit Bumrah drew first blood as he dismissed Ibrahim Zadran, who's looking good on the day.
Piece of bowling, Bumrah celebrates.
Much like Ibrahim, Gurbaz too looked impressive initially, but his time in the middle was cut short by Hardik Pandya.
And taken on the boundary. Shardul Thakur judging it well.
While Afghanistan lost wickets at the start, they weren't thrown off by that. Skipper Hashmatullah Shahidi and Azmatullah Omarzai pulled them out of trouble.
Yes! 2 terrific shots here.
National cricket. Both went on to complete 50s as Afghanistan began to close in on 200 runs.
Way over the top of mid-on.
India's need for a wicket was met by Hardik Pandya, who was visibly pumped with the dismissal.
Because the birthday boy has struck.
After scoring a brilliant 80, Hashmatullah Shahidi finally fell victim to Kuldeep Yadav, reducing Afghanistan to 225 for 5.
The West Indies.
Contrary to what many expected, Afghanistan posted a total in excess of 250, which may be a good effort, but still below par on a flat deck in Delhi.
Taken on the second attempt.
The Indian skipper hit the first boundary for the hosts to set the tone for the chase. He grew in confidence and got to 1,000 ODI World Cup runs in style.
4-6 for Rohit Sharma.
Rohit enjoyed the bulk of the strike and was only dealing in boundaries. In just 30 deliveries, he got to his 50, propelling India for a big win. Ishan Kishan also joined the party, and in no time, India were past 100 runs without losing a wicket. Rohit's century came in just 63 balls as he garnered a rapturous applause from those in the stadium.
Cricket World Cup. Previous best being Kapil Dev that we mentioned just a little while earlier.
Rashid Khan gave Afghanistan their first wicket, but India had already put 156 runs on the board.
Where was he earlier?
Surface.
Meanwhile, Rohit Sharma continued with the onslaught, with the ball being sent to different corners each time he cleared the boundary.
Another boundary in front of the wicket.
His blistering innings of 131 came to an end courtesy Rashid Khan, but the skipper had done the job.
Rashid Khan getting his man, but a brilliant innings.
India got to the target without breaking a sweat, making it 2 wins out of 2 in the World Cup.
Remains unbeaten.
running in great form, in complete control. India.
Yeah, I think it was a good win for us. It is very important at the start of the tournament that you get that momentum and have that winning streak continue. There will be times where you will be put under pressure as a team, but it's just about absorbing that pressure, making sure you're taking the right decisions on the field. When I talk about this, it means, when you bowl, some teams will put you under pressures. When you're batting, there will be a spell from the opposition where, you have to absorb that pressure, and that will happen as we move along, but I'm sure the kind of games we played leading up to the World Cup, we've tried ourselves under pressure, and I thought we responded really well to those moments. It's just now about, leaving what has happened aside and moving on from here.
Yeah, we had the target above 300 in this kind of condition, and we had in mind that India's batting lineup is strong, so we had that 300 plus, but unfortunately some back-to-back wickets that we had in our batting, so that cost us. Yeah, our thinking was the surface was good and we wanted to score more runs and put pressure on opposition, so again I will say that we had back-to-back wickets, so that was the reason that we didn't score more runs.
All right, you heard from the two captains. Let's now hear from our in-house panelist in Robin Uthappa. Robin, there are wins in cricket, then sometimes there are big wins in cricket. I don't know how to describe this. Is this a statement by the Indian team?
Oh, it's a statement and then some, as far as I'm concerned. I think this was clinical in every sense of the word. I think, just the way they executed their skills, batters, bowlers, fielders, top order was a concern for a lot of the guys in the studio, even here. Okay, will the opening batters get runs? And I think Rohit Sharma showed who's boss. And just went out there and dominated that innings. It was just a delight to watch. I was sitting on the couch going, wow, what's going on?
All right, we're going to talk about Rohit Sharma in detail, but this is a question, that I've been thinking of for some time. Looking at the way the Indian team batted today, winning that game in 35 overs with 8 wickets to spare. Had India batted first, do you think the record that we saw just a few days ago of most runs in a World Cup game set by South Africa on the same ground, that was under threat?
Yeah, possibly, because that wicket at Delhi was a scorcher of a wicket. And that was a fantastic wicket to bat on. And I can't say this enough. I think the curators and the ground staff have done a phenomenal job because we've known in the last 5, 7, maybe even 10 years, the wicket in Delhi is one that kind of skids and keeps kind of low. You don't expect it bounce too much. You get, we always as batters discuss that in Delhi, the bounce is not going to be above the waist. Even a short ball will probably come at best, maybe midriff height, not more than that. But here on this wicket, there was so much bounce, there's so much purchase for shots. You could see Rohit Sharma saying, man, anything slightly back of a length, I'm going to hit it and pump it to cow corner. And he was doing that so well today.
Okay, talking about Rohit Sharma, plenty of records Rohit Sharma notched up in that 100 that he got today. For starters, the fastest to 1,000 runs in World Cup history alongside David Warner. Now has the most amount of hundreds in World Cup. He was tied with Sachin Tendulkar, now sitting on top of that pile all by himself with 7. And then, of course, most sixes in the history of international cricket. He's gone past Chris Gayle. So plenty of records for Rohit Sharma. This is what he had to say about those records.
I'm just don't want to think about that stuff too much, because I know it's a long way to go ahead, and I don't want to lose my focus and focus on what the team is required of me. Focus on that part of my game, and then obviously when you get days like this, you got to make it count and make it big.
Okay, Robin still with us. Robin, this is his 7th ton in World Cup, most by any batsman in the history of World Cups. But what really got my eye was the fact that he's got just 19 innings and has 700s. Talk about that conversion rate.
Oh, that's incredible, isn't it? I think he cements himself into the greats of World Cup cricket, even one-day cricket, if I may go on to say so. He's certainly in India great, and I think arguably debate in a debate would be one of the picks for the greatest Indian ODI batsmen, along with Virat Kohli and Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid. Those are great names to be a part of. And Rohit Sharma has been right up there. As in, there were doubts, and people knew that the second wind. Anyone knows him and knows the ability he has. There was a second wind in there somewhere, and he seems to have found it, and just at the right time. And this augurs so well for Indian cricket, so well for India's chances in this World Cup. And overall, even right, I think just the maturity in which he's speaking, and he's being very honest about how this can affect the mind. Even if you're a great cricketer, even if you've achieved so much, you've scored more than 10,000 runs, you're still human, and these laurels can affect you. And he's very there's a lot of candor when he mentioned that I don't want to think about it because you can get lost in it, and it's very true. Because you want to stay focused on the job at hand, and today he just led from the front impeccably, and I think it's everything you need from a leader.
I want to talk to you about that sixes record, because when he first broke onto the scene, if you had asked me, and if I had asked you as well, because everyone spoke of his talent, if I had asked you at the time that will he get 1,000 runs, fastest to 1,000 in ODI cricket, probably you would have said yes, he could do it. If I had asked you whether he'll get 7 tons in a World Cup, you would have said probably yes, he can do it. But if I had asked you that he's going to be the highest six-hitter in the history of international cricket, many people would have had their doubts, because he's not that muscular Chris Gayle or an Andre Russell. He's none of that. Yet, he now stands on top of that pile. What does that tell you about Rohit Sharma, the batter?
I think the talent that God's blessed him with. And I think if God gave him 2, he's made it 10. And I think maximizing potential is what you would take out of that for me. And I think he's maximized potential. And he hasn't, obviously the onset of T20 cricket, kind of showed him what he is capable of. And I think that it has done that to many players. Very technically right, KL Rahul today is a very, very dangerous T20 cricketer. And I think the same is the case with someone like Rohit Sharma. He's been at the onset of T20 cricket, so he's evolved with the game, which is commendable for Rohit. And, when no one believed, he believed, which is a testimony of, there's a lesson out there for little kids and who want to achieve what they want to achieve as far as cricket is concerned, that it doesn't matter if anyone believes in your ability. As long as you do, you can achieve whatever you want to.
All right, Rohit Sharma, absolutely outstanding there for the Indian team, single-handedly taking them across the finish line versus Afghanistan. Now, there's another moment that we witnessed during the game. One of the subplots in the match between India and Afghanistan was the coming together of Virat Kohli and Naveen-ul-Haq. The two had their share of skirmishes in the IPL this year, and with Virat playing at his home ground, one expected there to be some sort of engagement between the two. It was as if the two moved past what happened in the IPL, and the two shook hands when Kohli was in the middle. The smile on both their faces suggesting that mutual respect was restored, and both had let go of previous misunderstandings. The crowd witnessing the moment also liked what they saw and responded with a roar. Robin, I want a word from you. Today we saw Virat Kohli, and this has happened earlier with Virat. When the crowds were booing Steve Smith, he asked them to calm down. We saw that today as well, where Virat actually telling the Delhi crowd that was screaming Kohli's name, where Naveen was fielding. Clearly, Virat Kohli, the elder statesman here today.
Oh, absolutely. It was delightful to watch that exchange. When it actually happened during the IPL, anyone who knows Virat Kohli personally, he's not that personality. And I remember when I spoke about it, when I tweeted about it, I came into for a lot of flock at that point in time. And, this is actually who Virat Kohli is. This is truly who he is when you sit with him one-on-one. He's a very delightful person to interact with, very honest. There's a lot of candor. And he's always smiling. He's a very playful kind of character. And you can see over the last 6-7 months, or post the IPL, if I may say so, there's been a lot of calmness that he kind of radiates even in his aura. He's having fun with his cricket. I think that 100 against Afghanistan, I think at that point in T20 World Cup last year, was a big kind of getting over a hurdle and brought him a lot of relief in that sense. And then you could see that his personality began to come through. And now I would go on to say that, he's truly become an elder statesman, a great ambassador for the game, and it's what you want from superstars of the game. And this is what cricket's all about. This is what makes cricket as endearing as it is to everyone who watches it and plays it.
All right, that was a moment in the game. Couple of other moments, Robin, I want to talk to you about specifically with this game. Let's take a look at this particular match from Afghanistan's point of view. India chased it out rather comfortably. But if there is one criticism that you could, direct towards the Afghanistan team, India goes on to a blistering start. Rohit Sharma is, hammering the bowlers. Did they take too much time to bring their ace bowler in Rashid Khan? He comes on in the 15th over, by which time India have already almost guaranteed themselves a win. Could they have brought him on earlier and maybe tried to get that breakthrough? Who knows what happens from there on?
Most certainly. And, by the 7th or 8th over, I was thinking, hey, it's not a bad idea to bring on Rashid Khan. He's one of the best in the world, if not the best at the moment. So why not bring him on and see if he can just put the brakes on this Indian, onslaught right now. That was the only kind of chance. And they didn't. And I think, they paid for it. And because when you delay the bringing on of a top bowler like that, what you tend to do is put pressure on him as well. To be able to strike immediately, and it's not often possible. He's done it more than a few times, but doesn't happen all the time. Not when someone like Rohit Sharma smashing the ball to all parts of the park like that.
Two batters from the Indian team that we spoke about in the mid-innings as well probably needed a bit of time out in the middle, getting some runs under their belt, going into that big game versus Pakistan. Were Ishan Kishan, Shreyas Iyer. Do you think they made most of the opportunity on offer today?
100%. As in, I was watching Ishan's innings quite closely, and for a big part of those first 10 overs, he didn't get too much strike. And you can tend to get a little impatient and want to score your runs as well, and play to the momentum of the game. But he exercised a lot of maturity at that point in time, rotated the strike, built partnership, took Afghanistan out of the game completely. And then once he felt he was settled enough, took the attack on to the Afghanistan bowlers. And whatever little you saw, Shreyas Iyer bat looked absolutely in control. Played aggressively when the ball was in his zone, backed himself to smash the ball out of the park. Played the pull shot with a lot of control and panache, which was great to watch again. These things all go well. It's exciting to watch from outside, and feels like everything is falling into the right place. You just want to keep your head down, keep your head on your shoulders, and play one game at a time.
Okay, since you say everything is falling into place, one final question before we let you go. Sets up that next game nicely. India, 2 matches, 2 wins. Pakistan, 2 matches, 2 wins.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a nail-biter. As in more than a nail-biter, it's going to be a sumptuous match, I think. And it's going to be in Ahmedabad. Having said that, I think the toss is going to play a massive factor. Because in the summers, in Ahmedabad, there is a lot of dew. So you can imagine the amount of dew that could be possible in the winters. They will throw that chemical on there that will reduce the dew as much as possible. Having said that, that doesn't necessarily work all the time. There are days it works, and there are days it just doesn't work. So, like they say, toss pe bahut nirbhar hai, this game. Yes. And I think a lot's going to be dependent on that toss. And India will want to win that toss and field first.
All right, toss is going to be the boss in Ahmedabad, as Robin there points out. But thank you so much, Robin, for joining us. Of course, we'll have Robin back on the D-Day. That is the 14th, India versus Pakistan. As we build up to that big game, you'll get live and exclusive coverage from Ahmedabad on India Today. For the moment, since we're talking about the India versus Pakistan game, the Pakistan team has already landed in Ahmedabad. Here are exclusive visuals of the team landing there and where they would be staying and the kind of security arrangements that have been made for them.
करके बात की जाए इस मैच को लेकर 7,000 जितने पुलिसकर्मी नरेंद्र मोदी स्टेडियम के अंदर और बाहर की तरफ सुरक्षा बंदोबस्त को लेकर तैनात रहेंगे। आरएफए की टीम, एनएसजी की टीम को नरेंद्र मोदी स्टेडियम के आसपास सुरक्षा बंदोबस्त के मद्देनजर रखा भी जाएगा। फिलहाल पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट टीम जो है वो अहमदाबाद की बात की जाए, साल 2005 के बाद साल 2012 में अहमदाबाद में मैच खेलने पहुंची थी। उसके बाद 11 साल बाद फिर एक बार पाकिस्तान की क्रिकेट टीम अहमदाबाद में वर्ल्ड कप की मैच खेलने के लिए पहुंच रही है। ये मैच भारत के साथ 14 अक्टूबर को होना है। सुरक्षा बंदोबस्त को लेकर सारी तैयारियां गुजरात पुलिस की तरफ से कर दी गई है। बात की जाए तो सेंट्रल एजेंसीज की भी मदद इस मैच को लेकर गुजरात पुलिस द्वारा ली गई है। हर्ष संघवी गुजरात के गृह राज्य मंत्री ने खुद मैदान में मुलाकात करके जीसीए के अधिकारियों के साथ, पुलिस अधिकारियों के साथ सुरक्षा बंदोबस्त को लेकर सारी चर्चाएं की हैं।
Again, just as we looked into this game, for us, it's quite crucial that we don't worry too much about the external factors. We need to come and show up on the ground really well. That will be critical for us going forward. And every game for us, we're going to treat it like that. We want to focus on what we need to do on that particular day. What is the pitch like? What sort of combination we need to play and things like that. So what happens outside is not in our control, and we won't be bothered by that. It's about for us focus on what we can focus on and what we can control as a players, and that is something that we'll be focusing on.
So Rohit Sharma there talking about not bothering about what's happening on the outside and just concentrating on the game. But there will be a lot of outside noise, as the Pakistan team will realize, because there's already a controversy brewing amidst the ongoing war between Israel and Palestine. Pakistani cricketer Mohammad Rizwan has put a word out on social media in solidarity with the people of Palestine. After playing a match-winning knock between Pakistan and Sri Lanka in that game, Rizwan took to social media platform X and dedicated his performance to the people in strife-torn Gaza. He said, and I quote, "This is for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, happy to contribute in the win," unquote. The solidarity expressed by Rizwan comes at a time when he's occupied with the Cricket World Cup. While the ICC disapproves players from making any political statement during an ICC event, the rule applies to players when they are in the field of play. And this occasion, it was done on his private handle. So what we are getting to hear from the International Cricket Council is that this is outside their jurisdiction and they will not be taking any sort of action on this. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to some other news from the Cricket World Cup. Plenty happening with so many teams involved. Indian batter Shubman Gill, who has been missing from action of late due to dengue, has reached Ahmedabad tonight. Gill did not travel with the team from Chennai to Delhi for the second match against Afghanistan. India's next match will be against arch rivals Pakistan on October the 14th, and it is still unknown whether Gill will feature in that match or not. But the good news is that he is improving at the moment. The match between India and Pakistan will be attended by PCB chief Zaka Ashraf. The PCB chief said that he will be reaching India on Thursday, but he delayed his visit and was scheduled to travel earlier. He said that he is traveling to India to motivate the team, and his message to them before the India contest will be to play fearlessly as they have been playing throughout the event. The Ahmedabad crime branch has arrested a history sheeter for allegedly sending an email threatening a blast at the Narendra Modi Stadium on October the 14th. According to the crime branch, the accused was arrested from Rajkot. The arrested individual is a history sheeter and has been previously charged for cases related to human trafficking and criminal intimidation. Australian captain Pat Cummins has revealed that the team will not choose to rotate their fast bowlers in the course of the ICC World Cup. Australia have made it a habit to occasionally rest their quicks, but Cummins has said that Mitchell Starc, Josh Hazlewood will continue to play all games alongside him and will only sit out if absolutely necessary. Australia started their World Cup campaign with a 6-wicket loss to India in Chennai thanks to a match-winning knock from Virat Kohli and KL Rahul. Now, ahead of the ICC World Cup game between India and Afghanistan, both teams observed a moment of silence in the memory of those who tragically lost their lives as a result of the recent earthquakes in Afghanistan. Additionally, Afghanistan's players sported black armbands in memory of those whose lives were tragically taken. A powerful 6.3 magnitude earthquake had struck the northwestern part of the nation and has left over 2,000 people dead. All right, before we wrap up this edition of Battle of Champions, here's a reminder that if you crave for some more cricketing action, insight, as well as want your questions answered on the Cricket World Cup, all you need to do is tune into our digital platform, Sports Today. Go to YouTube, search for Sports Today, join us there every day before every match, in the mid-innings as well as post-match during the Cricket World Cup. We'll take all your questions. Plus, we've got lots more interesting content surrounding the Cricket World Cup.
You are watching India Today, Powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
With over 1,200 killed in the latest war between Hamas and Israel, several questions are being raised over Israel's intelligence failure. Israel, which has long prided itself on its ability to infiltrate and monitor Islamist groups, was indeed caught off guard by Hamas's sudden terror attack, according to sources cited by news agency Reuters. Hamas gave the impression that it wasn't ready for the war. The outfit convinced Israel it cared more about its economy and ensuring that workers remain in Gaza. Hamas's deception helped it prepare for this massive invasion. The terror group constructed a mock Israeli settlement in Gaza where they practiced military landing and trained to storm it. Hamas also made videos of their training drills. The mission's secrecy was maintained throughout. Fighters who were being trained did not know the exact purpose of their intense training. Many Hamas leaders too were unaware of the plans. Ignorant of the developments taking place on its border, Israel turned its focus away from Hamas as it pushed for a deal to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. Convinced that Hamas did not have any plans of military adventure, Israel had also reduced the number of soldiers deployed around Gaza. This was exploited by the Hamas, who successfully duped Israel into believing that violence was a thing of the past. Bureau Report, India Today.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 36 and minimum 24 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 33 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 35 and minimum 26 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 26 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 33 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 32 and minimum 22 degrees.
Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast on the horrors of Hamas. I'm Gaurav Sawant. This special broadcast comes to you from the southernmost tip of southern Israel. We are currently at a location called Stridot, which is very close to the Gaza border. You can hear the bombs go off, you can hear the drones above, and you can hear the constant boom of the Israeli bombs pounding Hamas. But over the course of the next half hour, we tell you more about the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Big Israel-Hamas escalation looms. Will Gaza be invaded next? India's top conflict reporters on ground zero.
अभी यहाँ पर हमास के रॉकेट्स अभी ऊपर आ रहे हैं और आयरन डोम सिस्टम यहाँ पर आ रहा है. अभी हम लोग बिल्कुल भागने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं. एक मिनट.
As Hamas rains hellfire on Israel.
Thick plumes of smoke rising over the horizon. That is Gaza being bombed by the Israeli forces.
Shattering view of the war zone.
पूरा घर दहल रहा है. धमाकों से सायरन बजा और महज 20 सेकंड के भीतर से जो रॉकेट है वो दागे गए हैं.
From Israel to Lebanon.
The whole patch of Gaza Strip is on one side with the sea. From the land also now the Israel has enhanced the security of the sea so that the Hamas and the Hezbollah fighters could not penetrate.
The most exhaustive coverage of Israel-Hamas war.
The Hamas killing 1,200 Israelis and critically wounding a large number of others have shocked and horrified the entire world. The manner in which this terror attack was carried out, the barbarity with which little children were massacred, even the old ones spared, goes on to show the sheer hatred in the hearts and minds of the Hamas when it comes to Israel and the residents of this country. Even little children were not spared. Several people were burnt alive in cars like this one. CCTV cameras like the one here have captured that horror. Israel now has a steely resolve that they will punish the perpetrators of the worst terror attack in their history.
Unspeakable horrors of the Hamas terror attacks on Israel. Reports suggest Hamas terrorists brutally slaughtered, beheaded 40 babies in a kibbutz, Kfar Aza, near the Gaza Strip in the most monstrous way. This is what an Israeli general has claimed. Cribs overturned, strollers left behind. Barbaric enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The entire world has reeled in horror.
It's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities. Babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down. Families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. Many of them reserves who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well.
The Israeli government has sent out a big warning to the Hamas terrorists for allegedly killing innocent babies.
We had hundreds massacred, families wiped out in their beds and their homes, women brutally raped and murdered, over 100 kidnapped, including children. It's only gotten worse. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
Those who behead children, burn women, and kill Holocaust survivors will be deleted. The clear message and full support I conveyed today to our dear fighters at the Gaza border.
Some soldiers say they found babies with their heads cut off and entire families gunned down in their beds.
We walk door after door. We kill a lot of the terrorists. We are stronger than them. They are aggressive. They are very bad. They cut head of children, cut head of women, but we are stronger than them.
The Israeli Defense Forces were removing the bodies of victims found in the area when they found the children's mutilated remains. According to reports, Hamas terrorists unleashed barbarism while the babies were sleeping with their parents, dragged them into the streets, beheading most of them and shooting the remaining dead, is what the Israeli government claims.
Think it's not a war. It's not a battlefield. You see the babies, the mother, the fathers in the bedrooms, in the protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war. It's not a battlefield. It's a massacre. It's a terror activity. So you can look it about on yourself. It's something that I never saw in my life.
Another horrific image from the kibbutz Reim shows the terrorists forcing their entry and lying in ambush. One of the terrorists is seen attacking a passenger car which arrives unsuspecting at the gate, opening fire from point-blank range and gunning down all occupants of the vehicle. More than 700 Israelis were killed in one day in the kibbutz near the Gaza border. The largest terror attack in a single day in the country's history, where 1,200 Israelis have died. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra across Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
Hamas has repeatedly targeted Israel, but never at this scale. The lack of distance between the Hamas-held territory at the Gaza Strip and these localities in southern Israel go on to indicate how vulnerable the kibbutz, the small towns, the small villages and locations here in southern Israel are. And this is where Hamas targeted the Israelis the most, especially in places like Stridot, where there was mayhem on the streets. Even a police station was taken over. Let me get you more on the blood-soaked history of Hamas and Israel.
Hamas is an Islamist organization with a military wing. It came into being in 1987. Hamas emerged from a Sunni Islamist group founded in the late 1920s in Egypt called the Muslim Brotherhood. The word Hamas in itself is an acronym for Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya, Arabic for Islamic Resistance Movement. It is today recognized worldwide as a terrorist group. Like most Palestinian factions and political parties, Hamas insists that Israel is an occupying power and that it is trying to liberate the Palestinian territories. It considers Israel an illegitimate state. Its refusal to recognize Israel is one reason why it has rejected peace talks in the past. In 1993, it opposed the Oslo Accords, a peace pact between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO. Hamas presents itself as an alternative to the Palestinian Authority, or the PA. The PA is today led by Mahmoud Abbas and is based in Ramallah in the West Bank, while Hamas operates from the Gaza enclave.
If you go back, Hamas was created in the 1980s, and it's all about creating an Islamist state in all of historic Palestine. Because of that, Hamas hates Israel the most, but they also don't have much love for the Palestinian Authority, which is secular. And not only is it secular as opposed to Islamist, but it believes in a two-state solution, and Hamas does not. I think this is one thing that many viewers may not understand. Hamas is not fighting for there to be a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli state. Hamas is fighting to destroy Israel and to have one Palestinian state that is not secular but is Islamist in all of historic Palestine, in all of Israel, and all of the West Bank, and all of the Gaza Strip. So it's against peace in general, and that makes it very, very different.
Hamas today controls the Gaza Strip, an enclave that is home to some 2.1 million Palestinians. Since winning legislative elections in 2006, Hamas has repeatedly attacked Israel with rockets and mortars, emerging as a defiant adversary. Israel has retaliated with its superior firepower and a punishing blockade, restricting imports and the movement of civilians in a strategy of collective punishment. The blockade and recurring Israeli strikes have contributed to Gaza's poor infrastructure and living conditions.
One of the reasons it carried out its attack now is because of the prospect of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And over the past few weeks, even months, Hamas officials have been quite open about the fact that this would be a huge event.
Hamas enjoys support from Lebanon's Hezbollah and Iran. This war, started by Hamas, has destabilized the region that has been in dispute for more than a century now. The one caught in this war is ordinary Palestinian and is